American comic, I'm lost, I'm surrounded by superheroes with father issues. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51, Martian Manhunter's Resentment. Ahem, the black man coughed and greeted Azu. Hello, John Patrick. Azu took a deep breath and looked at the guy who could block his fist with caution. He was extremely surprised. The fist he had just hit with all his strength was easily blocked by the other party. The tall black man with thick black eyebrows seemed to see what Azu was thinking. He took a step forward and said, "Don't be so alert. I'm not a bad person." Clark happened to go upstairs at this time. Seeing the stranger appearing in the barn, he immediately stood next to Azu with caution. Looking at the two boys with vigilant faces, the black man took out his ID. "I am John Jones, a member of the FBI. Kids, relax, don't keep your body tense." Azu didn't believe the other party's nonsense. After all, there was a black man pretending to be a policeman last time. Who knows if this guy is a fake FBI member? He didn't recognize the FBI ID. Thinking of this, Azu concentrated his ears and tried to use super hearing to listen to the other party's heartbeat. Strange. The heartbeat is normal. Then he followed what Peter taught him and observed the other person's eyes. According to his father, when people lie, they will blink unconsciously, or look up or to the right, in order to mobilize the part of the brain responsible for creative thinking. Pupil contraction and eyelid trembling are all panic reactions. Contrary to Zu's expectations, the other person's eyes were also normal, without twitching or sudden movement of the eyeballs. Dad is not at home. Zu couldn't tell whether the other person was lying or not, and he didn't struggle with it. He said with a stern face, "Maybe you should come to visit after Dad comes back." "Well, I'm also interested in visiting Mr. Patrick, but you don't mind us chatting together, John?" And, as he said, he turned his eyes to Clark. Clark looked at him in surprise. "You know my name." "Oh, I can still guess what you are thinking." John Jones smiled at Clark. "Clark, are you wondering if I am here to arrest you? If you are in prison, how many cigarettes would you be worth?" "Right." Clark is also a viewer of the TV series The Fugitive. Clark opened his mouth wide. The other party actually guessed what he was thinking. He really thought that the other party was from the FBI and was here to arrest him because of Tang's death. "As for you," he said, turning his gaze to Azu, using his telepathic ability to try to see Azu's inner thoughts. After hearing Azu's thoughts, his face instantly became darker. Although this brat has powerful abilities, why is his mind full of messy and inconsistent ideas that do not conform to the correct values? He actually wanted to force himself, who has superpowers, to stay and work illegally on his farm for free. Did he go back from the 21st century to the 18th century as a farmer? How did this brat's parents teach him? Peter Patrick is a 100% bastard. Although he has not met Peter yet, he has already labeled Peter as a bastard in his mind. Ahem. John Jones coughed twice unnaturally, changed the subject and said, "When will your father come back?" "Not necessarily." Clark did not notice his abnormality, and suddenly his eyes lit up after replying. "Mr. Jones, are you here to prepare to investigate the alien spacecraft?" "What?" John Jones was stunned. Clark said excitedly, "Recently, everyone has been saying that alien spaceships have landed. The class has even set up a scientific investigation team to investigate aliens." "Mr. Jones, are you going to investigate aliens?" "No." John Jones shook his head and said to the two people with a serious expression, "There are no aliens, no alien spaceships, but a parasite that has landed here. Tell your classmates not to go out at night, otherwise the bugs will eat people, bugs that eat people." Hearing the other party's words, Clark swallowed his saliva nervously. "Yes, so for everyone's safety, it's best to stay at home." He looked up at the last sunset in the distant sky. "Okay, kids, I have to go. I wish you good luck." He waved to the two boys and turned to walk downstairs. When his figure completely blended into the night, his body began to change. The black skin gradually faded, and the green skin covered his body. John Jones, with red eyes, wearing a cloak, exuding a strong oppressive force, flew into the sky with a boom. Hovering above the entire town of Smallville, he closed his eyes and used his super senses to capture any suspicious existence. John Jones, formerly known as Ron Jones, is a Martian hunter from Mars. He has super strength, super speed, super endurance, and other abilities, as well as strong telepathy and deformation abilities. The image of the black policeman just now is also the image he changed to fight criminals. The purpose of coming to Smallville this time is to catch alien parasites. Unexpectedly, he just arrived in the town and met two gifted bear children. Clark is a Kryptonian, so what is John? Closing his eyes, the Martian hunter thought about Zoo's identity. At the same time, his super senses were also turned on to detect the traces of alien parasites. After a long while, he slowly opened his eyes. After thinking for a while, he found nothing, and no traces of parasites were found. Shaking his head, he turned and flew away from the town. At the same time, huff, huff, Lex Luthor panted and walked quickly on the road. Because he didn't want to leave Smallville and return to Metropolis, Lex secretly ran out of the manor in a rage. Originally, he just wanted to hide outside for a while and then go back, but he was unlucky enough to get lost. With a flashlight, he wrapped his clothes tightly and looked at the road ahead. He suppressed his fear and mustered up the courage to continue moving forward. While walking quickly forward, Lex occasionally raised his head and could see the stars moving on the top of the dark woods. In some places, the road was almost blocked by bushes, and the branches of the bushes kept hanging on his shoulders. Lex kept changing hands to hold the flashlight, and his heart became more and more frightened. He felt that something seemed to be approaching him from behind. Swallowing his saliva, Lex mustered up the courage to turn around. A rustling sound suddenly came from the left rear, and a disgusting smell entered his nose. He was already filled with fear, and he immediately ran forward at the fastest speed. Plop! Lex, who was running forward with his feet on the ground, was tripped by the dense vines on the ground without paying attention. Seeing the readers urging for more chapters, in order not to disappoint the readers, the new author will release the chapters for tomorrow's noon in advance. This is only for today, and it will return to normal in the future. The period of listing is not counted. Sanchin will definitely update every day when the book is listed. In addition, it is not that Sanchin does not want to update, but the new book period is 2 chapters. After the book is listed, Sanchin guarantees that 10,000 chapters will be read every day. Thank you for the support of the readers, Sanchin bows. If you have monthly tickets and recommendation tickets, please vote. Thank you. Chapter 52, Unfair Father and Son. Lex suddenly felt a sharp pain in his left leg. He looked down and found that there was a hole in his jeans at the knee of his left leg. He subconsciously reached out and touched the painful area, and suddenly a slippery feeling came from his fingers. Before he could relieve the pain, the rustling sound from the bushes behind him stimulated his spirit again. Realizing that he could not sit and wait for death, Lex used all his strength to get up and continue to run forward while enduring the pain in his legs. He struggled to climb over the fallen tree trunk and climbed down the steep slope panting. However, the rustling sound behind him not only did not disappear, but gave him a feeling of getting closer and closer. This feeling was not good, and he quickened his pace again. Running through the out-of-control bushes around him, the smell of earth from leaves came into his nose. Soon, he heard the gurgling sound of water flowing over stones. Looking closely, there was a small river not far ahead. Suddenly, a black shadow passed by him and knocked him to the ground, knocking him unconscious. Lex endured the severe pain in his body and struggled to stand up, eager to know what attacked him. He tried to look forward, and his eyes, which were originally wide open due to fear, suddenly shrank. A pair of eyes emitting evil breath and glowing purple light appeared from the bushes in front. Lex felt as if his body was about to be frozen, and his mind was blank. Frightened, Lex wanted to stand up and escape from here. But his heart was filled with fear, and he found that his legs were shaking constantly and he was completely out of control. Just when he thought he was about to be eaten by the monster hiding in the dark, footsteps suddenly came from behind him. Hoolah! The next second, the bushes were pushed aside, and Peter looked at the little bald head lying on the ground in surprise. He was driving back from Kent Farm. On the way, he heard footsteps and heavy breathing nearby, so he got out of the car and walked over to check the situation. Unexpectedly, he saw a bald boy. "Are you okay?" Peter looked at the bald Lex and stretched out his hand to him. He thought the other party was a playful kid from a nearby family. Lex looked at Peter's outstretched hand and grabbed it. The emotion of surviving a disaster almost made him cry with excitement. Holding Peter's hand, Lex excitedly pointed to the front and said, "Sir, there are monsters over there." Peter raised his head and looked in the direction he pointed. There was only a bunch of bushes in front, nothing suspicious. He frowned slightly and cast his eyes into the distance. This place does have a strange atmosphere. Padwick Farm. Clark was holding a Funk Wagner's Standard English Dictionary and looking up English words. The man-eating bugs that the Martian hunter said to him in the evening made him very concerned. Haunted means ghosts often appear in the town. Clark took the dictionary and read out the explanation of the word. Haunting means it keeps appearing in the mind and is hard to forget. Zoo heard Clark's muttering, came up and asked curiously, "Clark, are you learning words?" "No, I just think of bad things." Clark read out the third word in the dictionary, to haunt. These three words are all related to haunt. When haunt is regarded as a noun, there is an explanation, a place where animals hunt. He put the dictionary down as he spoke and scratched his head. Detective Jones said that what descended on the town were not aliens, but alien parasites. Then is this place a haunt for animals? Zoo shook his head. "I don't know, but no matter what that bug is, I will deal with it, so don't worry, Clark. I will protect Dad and you." Clark is not as optimistic as Zoo, especially after Tang died. He always felt a sense of guilt. "Are you scared, Zoo?" "No, haven't you heard a saying, Clark, if you fall into a story, everyone knows that you should feel scared at the end." "Not now." Zoo picked up the cookie and stuffed it into his mouth. "That's what my father said." He just mentioned Peter, and the sound of a car engine suddenly came from outside, and Peter drove back to the farm. On the way, Peter had already found out that the little bald guy was Lex Luthor. He didn't expect that he would just pick up the future Superman's nemesis, Lex Luthor, on the road. Looking at the other's smooth head, Peter understood why this kid would be one of the smartest people on Earth in the future. Having such a strong hairstyle since childhood, he will definitely have a promising future. In addition, although this kid is Clark's enemy, if the relationship between the two can be reversed, maybe the other party will become a helper for himself and Clark in the future. Lex got off the car, not knowing that Peter was complaining about his bald head. He looked at the farm curiously. Looking at the shabby farm in front of him, he secretly made up his mind to ask his father to help pay for a bigger farm for Mr. Peter. After all, Mr. Peter just saved him from the monster. Azu and Clark in the living room came out after hearing the sound, and saw a little bald man following Peter out of the car. Azu stepped forward vigilantly and asked, "Dad, who is this?" He always felt that the little bald man in front of him gave him a feeling that he was not a good person. "This is Lex Luthor, you can get to know him." Peter patted the somewhat restrained Lex on the shoulder. "Go to the house and play with John and Clark. I have called your father and he will be here soon." Lex nodded and thanked Peter again. "Thank you, Mr. Peter." Half an hour later, Leno Luthor hurried to the farm and breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that his son was safe. After thanking Peter, he drove Lex away from the farm. After the Luthors left, Azu told him about John Jones. John Jones. Peter fell into deep thought after hearing the name. He remembered that Martian Manhunter had used this name. The image of a man with green skin, bald head and blue shorts, the shorts were not covered with leggings, appeared in his mind. Martian Manhunter's superpowers are very similar to Clark's, but he is more versatile than Clark, with telepathy, shape-shifting, invisibility and other abilities. Although the opponent is powerful, he also has fatal weaknesses. In addition, his image is not as sunny and handsome as Clark, so his popularity is low. It is said that he tried to change his job and became a nanny behind the scenes. "I am short of a nanny. I wonder if this superhero is interested." At this time, Martian Manhunter would never think that neither of them is a good person. One wants him to be a slave on the farm, and the other wants him to be a nanny. Shaking his head, Peter threw the idea of Martian Manhunter as a nanny out of his mind and focused on the alien parasite. Was Tang's death also caused by this alien parasite? Looking up, his eyes looked at the dark night outside the window. In the night, it seemed that the wandering devourer was hidden, quietly waiting for his prey. The next day, early morning, Peter just got up when he received a call from Jonathan. "Peter, something happened. Thanks to Shushan Yao Dao Iao and Huajin Liu Zuan for the reward, Bo. Thank you all for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. I hope readers will smile often. Good luck will come naturally." Chapter 53. I'll send you to hell with reluctance. Kent Farm. Peter looked at the dead cattle on the ground with a serious expression. The bodies of the livestock lying on the ground were shriveled, as if all the blood and vitality had been drained out of their bodies. Jonathan, who was next to him, was in a heavy mood and comforted his tearful wife. Overnight, more than a dozen cows raised on the farm all died strangely, which made the farm, which was already running at a loss, even worse. The police used yellow cordon to surround the fence, and professional staff were checking the cause of death of the cattle. Officer Ryan, wearing a mask, walked over and asked Jonathan, "Jonathan, did you hear any strange noises last night?" "No, my wife and I went to bed early last night and didn't hear any noises," Jonathan said. "We didn't find out until this morning." "Have you had a conflict with anyone recently?" Officer Ryan continued to ask. "Probably not, Officer Ryan. Do you think someone poisoned it?" He closed his notebook. "It's not ruled out. In any case, Jonathan, we will definitely help you find the bastard who killed the livestock." Ryan comforted the two and returned to the scene to see if he could find some useful clues. On the other side, Peter took a quick look at the cow's body and walked in front of Jonathan and the others. He comforted the two of them. "No matter what, Jonathan, it's good that everyone is okay." Jonathan sighed and asked Peter, "Do you know what happened?" Peter, "No, I don't know what happened here." Peter turned his eyes to the corpses on the ground, "But I have some guesses. The bodies of these dead cows are very similar to the death of Don Haggerty, the 12-year-old child." Jonathan frowned. "You mean," he asked uneasily, "the murderer who killed Don did it? How is this possible? Why did he kill these livestock?" "Maybe." Peter turned his eyes, shrugged his shoulders and said, "What kind of blood-sucking creature is that?" He did not tell the two people directly about the alien parasites. Compared with alien parasites, ordinary people should be more likely to accept settings such as blood-sucking creatures. Martha, who was next to him, looked thoughtful when she heard Peter say blood-sucking creature. "I seemed to hear strange noises on the farm last night, Peter," she said to Peter. "It sounded like laughter, rising and falling, like hysterical laughter, deafening and sharp. If the murderer is a vampire, would that be the sound it made?" Jonathan didn't believe in the vampire. He frowned and said to his wife, "It's just an abbey bird, Martha, don't think too much." Peter shook his head and said to the two of them, "Whether it's a vampire or an abbey bird, Jonathan, Martha, for your safety, you'd better stay on my farm for a while." Jonathan wanted to refuse, but when he thought of the last time he refused Peter, which resulted in him and Martha being kidnapped, he swallowed the words in his mouth. "You can work on the farm during the day and stay at my place at night." Jonathan heard what Peter said, and he no longer hesitated. "Then I'll trouble you, Peter. You're welcome. We are a family." He patted Jonathan on the shoulder. In the morning, Peter drove back to Patrick's farm. After getting off the car, he found that the atmosphere on the farm was a little strange. The farm, which used to be noisy, seemed to be too quiet. "Clark? John?" Peter frowned and shouted the names of the two people while walking forward. When he walked into the living room, there was still no trace of the two people. Confused, he raised his head and looked at the TV that was still on in the living room. Swoosh! Using super speed to instantly move to the second floor, he immediately activated his supervision and looked around. He soon found Clark and John lying in the cattle pen. After teleporting to the fence, he quickly picked up the two people lying unconscious on the ground. After checking the two people's conditions, he found that they were not injured. Their breathing was stable, their faces were ruddy, and they did not look like they were poisoned or suffering from mental attacks. Peter took a long breath and carried the two people back to the room and put them on the bed. In the dream, Azu felt that he was trapped in a closed room. The temperature in the room continued to rise, and the feeling of suffocation and high temperature enveloped his whole body, making it difficult for him to breathe and his skin burning. He hammered the room desperately, trying to escape from the high-temperature furnace. At the same time, a familiar smell of his father entered his nose. "Huh?" Zu suddenly woke up from his dream. He opened his eyes and found Peter leaning over him, pressing his shoulders. "Don't move, Zu. You're going to shake the bed down." Zu panted and made a surprised sound. "Dad, yeah, are you awake?" Zu scratched his head. "A little bit, Dad. I'm not sleeping." "No, I'm not dreaming either." "I don't think so." Zu thought for a while and finally came back to his senses from his confusion. "I'm sorry, Dad. Why apologize? I didn't protect Clark just now." At this point, Zu quickly stood up and looked for Clark. Seeing Clark rubbing his eyes and standing up from the bed, he breathed a sigh of relief. "John, Clark, do you feel uncomfortable?" Peter called Clark over and asked the two. "I'm fine, Godfather, just a little tired." Azu nodded. "Me too, Dad. I'm a little tired." Peter checked the two again and found nothing abnormal, then asked them, "What happened? Why did you fall into coma?" "Clark, you tell me." Clark recalled. "I remember I was accompanying Azu to do flight training, and I heard a noise from the cow shed. So I came over to have a look, and then, he rubbed his brows, I saw a man behind the cow shed. I thought he was a thief. John also rushed over. We wanted to beat him down, and then, Clark felt cold all over when he thought of the previous scene. He held my and Azu's fists, and then I felt weak all over, and I was so sleepy that I wanted to sleep. Azu said that his experience was the same as Clark's. Dad, me too. I felt that he had drained all my strength. Peter frowned after listening to the two stories. He immediately thought of the alien parasite. This thing can suck down Haggerty and the livestock on Kent's farm dry, and it is not impossible to absorb Clark and Azu. It's just that the two naughty kids are not ordinary people. Ordinary people would be sucked dry, but they just fainted and slept for a while before recovering. Do you remember what he looks like? Peter narrowed his eyes slightly. Since this thing provoked him, he didn't mind sending it from an alien planet to hell. Chapter 54 Death Party. Peter recorded the image of the parasite host described by Clark and Zoo and sent it to Officer Chandler, asking him to help him investigate. At night, Peter was having dinner with Jonathan's family when the farm phone rang. Peter picked up the phone. Hello, this is Padrick Farm. Peter, it's me, Chandler. Hearing Chandler's voice, Peter put the microphone close to his ear and said, I guess, I want you to help investigate the identity of that guy. Now there's a clue, right, Officer Chandler, you guessed right, Peter. I have screened out several people based on the appearance and physical characteristics of the man you described. Chandler on the other end of the phone said to Peter, the most suspicious person is Dr. David Harewood. He is an employee of Luther Chemical Group and is mainly engaged in synthetic biology and bioenergy. He is also the chief scientific officer of the biological laboratory of Luther Group. Logically, he should not appear in Smallville, but someone has seen him in the town recently. Peter adjusted his posture and moved the microphone to the other ear. This is not surprising. Maybe Leno Luthor is secretly conducting some experiments in Smallville. After thanking Chandler and hanging up the phone, Peter held the receiver and fell into deep thought. David Harewood, this guy has a great possibility of becoming the host of alien parasites. This also explains why the other party attacked Lex Luthor. As a worker of the Luthor Group, it is understandable that he attacked Leno Luthor's family because of resentment and dissatisfaction in his heart. Speaking of which, Leno Luthor invited me to attend the party he hosted before. If I remember correctly, the time is tomorrow night. It seems that I have to prepare in advance and attend the party tomorrow night. After hanging up the phone, Peter made a decision in his heart. The next day, time quickly came to the evening. In the Luthor manor, the living room decorated gorgeously and elegantly was filled with happy, lively or insincere conversations and laughter. Peter stood in the hall, put down the champagne in his hand, and observed the people around him who were dressed brightly and beautifully, standing in groups of 3 or 2 and talking. There were not many people at the party, and Peter found many familiar people in it, members of the oldest Hanks family in town, Old Mike, the museum curator and amateur historian, the mayor, and his office assistant. Thank you for coming to the party, Padrick. Leno came over and greeted Peter in a good mood. I haven't thanked you properly for sending Lex back last time, Peter politely replied. You're welcome, it's just a small favor. Leno took a glass of champagne from the waiter and said to Peter, giving champagne to others will leave a lingering fragrance on your hands. This is a level I can't reach. Anyway, Padrick, let me express my gratitude. He knew that Peter would not accept his material thanks, so he wanted to introduce the people at the party to Peter. No, thank you, I don't need it for the time being. Peter declined the other party's proposal. He didn't come to the party to make connections. If David Harewood is the host of the alien parasite, Leno Luthor, as the boss, might know something. He planned to take advantage of the opportunity to attend the party to prepare to investigate in Luthor Manor, and naturally he would not waste time on this. After being rejected, Leno Luthor put down the glass with some regret. Just as he was about to say something else, he saw other important guests waving at him. After talking to Peter for a few more words, he went to entertain other guests. After watching the other party leave, Peter tightened the tie on his suit, which he was not used to, and turned to a corner where no one noticed. Swoosh, the curtains were blown up by the wind, and Peter disappeared in a moment of falling. On the second floor, Leno Luthor's office. Peter looked around the other party's office and began to look for clues. Soon he found a videotape marked Laboratory David Harewood accident in the drawer. After inserting the videotape into the player, the video of David Harewood dissecting a coyote was played on the screen. As the video progressed, Peter saw David Harewood pinching the face of the laboratory assistant and quickly absorbing the life, and then pressed the pause button. He took a step closer to the screen and stared at the strange and distorted face on the screen. The alien parasite seemed to have given David powerful power and affected his mind. After a while, he turned his eyes away from the screen and looked at the foggy night outside the window. If this parasite can absorb life force and become stronger, then will it become stronger after absorbing Clark and Azu? At the same time, in the hall downstairs, there was an unexpected guest at the party. Leno Luthor was talking to the guests and accidentally caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. Seeing the familiar face of Dr. David Harewood at the door, Leno's face changed instantly. He forced himself to calm down, pretending to be calm, and said to the people around him, "Sorry, I have to leave for a while." As he said that, he walked upstairs quickly and said to the secretary who followed him, "Close all the entrances and exits on the first floor immediately, and let all the guards be ready. Since he appears, let him not be able to escape." "But what about the guests?" the secretary asked in embarrassment. "Don't worry, there will always be some price to pay," Leno said with an unchanged expression. But he stopped again and said to his secretary hesitantly, "Arrange a helicopter immediately. Also, send someone to protect Peter Padrick upstairs. Make sure he's safe." Knowing that David Harewood was parasitized and seeing the other party's terrible power, Leno certainly would not be unprepared. Although he didn't know where the other party would appear, he had made plans for various situations. Bang! With a dull sound, the door of the hall was heavily closed. The lively voices in the living room were quieted. Everyone stopped and looked in the direction of the sound in confusion. The fully armed guards wearing protective clothing wrapped David Harewood. David had a middle-aged white face and looked at the guards around him in surprise. "Well, I didn't know Leno would welcome me so much. I just wanted to talk to him." As he said that, he waved his hand forward, and with a bang, accompanied by a dull impact, the guard holding a gun was smashed directly against the wall. Bones were broken and blood splattered on the wall, forming a shocking red scroll. The stunned crowd immediately screamed in terror and fled in all directions. Amid the screams and cries, accompanied by a strong smell of blood, the lively gathering instantly turned into a terrifying death party. Thank you readers for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. I bow to thank you. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55, Azu on Thin Ice. Looking at the chaotic scene in front of him and the guards pointing their weapons at him, David's figure flashed and moved to the nearest guard. His palm grabbed the latter's face like lightning and lifted him up. In full view of the crowd, the guard's body withered into the appearance of an 80 or 90-year-old in an instant. Feeling the vitality gained from the guard's body, David threw it casually. Crash! The chandelier above the luxurious hall was hit by the thrown body, and the glass that fell to the ground splashed. David, who had been parasitized by aliens, possessed super strength and super speed far beyond ordinary people, and quickly dealt with the gunmen surrounding him. Peter, who was on the second floor, heard the sound coming from downstairs and immediately moved to the first floor at the fastest speed. What he saw was David killing the guard. After easily dealing with the guard, David did not attack the terrified crowd, but went directly to Leno on the second floor. Leno did not expect that his men would be dealt with by the other party so quickly, and he was a little dumbfounded. When he reacted, David had already arrived in front of him. "Mr. Leno, we can cooperate. Why do we have to fight each other?" "What?" Leno looked at him in shock, not knowing what the other party was up to. "This planet is being destroyed by humans. Humans live only to absorb the vitality of the earth, like parasites. Only we can save this planet." His voice was a little hoarse. "If you surrender to me and use your resources, Leno Luthor, we can make this world different." Leno listened to the other party's crazy speech and took a step back. "You parasitic monster." Although he thought he was not a good person most of the time, it was impossible to cooperate with such a monster. As soon as he finished speaking, a black shadow suddenly appeared behind him. Bang! In just a moment, David was hit hard by the black shadow and flew out. The terrifying momentum violently smashed through the wall, and for a moment, a large piece of swirling earth, stone, smoke and dust spread. The sudden scene made everyone at the scene stunned. Peter, who was standing on the first floor, was also a little confused. Someone actually took action before him. At the moment when the black shadow took action just now, Peter could barely see that it was a black man. Black man? Could this guy be the Martian hunter who came to Peter's house a few days ago? Just when Peter was trying to determine the identity of this black man, whether it was the Martian hunter. John Jones grabbed David's head, who was lying on the ground and had not yet recovered, and then with a bang, he broke through the ceiling and flew into the sky. Flying in the air, the skin on the surface of his body gradually changed and transformed back to the green-skinned form. With a bang, the Martian hunter grabbed David's head and landed near a power station. He threw David to the open space. Looking at David, who slowly stood up on the ground, the Martian hunter looked at him seriously. "This planet doesn't like parasites, you shouldn't come here." David's eyes revealed a purple light. "Why not? This planet is in danger, we are chosen to save it." As he said this, he punched the Martian hunter, and the air shock wave tore the air and stirred up turbulence. The Martian hunter stretched out his fist to block, and was immediately smashed out uncontrollably, and spun several times in the air before stopping. He didn't expect the opponent's power to be so strong. Originally, he attended the party as John Jones, but he didn't expect to encounter the real body of the parasite. Surprised, he thought he could easily deal with the other party. Now it seems that it won't be that easy. Did this parasite eat something tonic? The Martian hunter exhaled, flew in front of this guy in an instant, and punched him hard. Bang! With a shock wave visible to the naked eye, David hit the ground, plowed along gully roughly, and fainted directly. Although it has become a little different, it is still within the controllable range. Landing in front of David, who was knocked unconscious, the Martian hunter muttered to himself while reaching out to grab the other party. David, who didn't want to lie on the ground motionless, suddenly turned around and stretched out his arm to hold his fist. The Martian hunter instantly felt a sense of weakness, and his vitality was quickly drained by the other party. Ugh! The Martian hunter made a painful sound and knelt on the ground weakly. His vitality was rapidly lost. Just when he was about to collapse, a bang sound of impact sounded, and David, who had absorbed his vitality, was directly knocked out. Martian Manhunter broke free of the control and rolled to the ground. He tried to stand up, gasping for breath, but couldn't do it. After knocking David away, Peter walked to Martian Manhunter and looked down at the struggling opponent. "Are you okay, Martian?" Martian Manhunter immediately knew the identity of Peter Clark and John's father through telepathy. He suppressed his inner shock and replied to Peter, "No, not very good. He is infected by parasites. Don't let him absorb it." Peter's expression was serious. "What exactly is this dead bug?" "It comes from an alien planet. The host of the parasite absorbs the vitality of humans or animals to make itself stronger." Martian Manhunter panted and said, "He just absorbed my ability and should have become stronger." David's body had been deformed at this time. The epidermis skin fell off and his whole body was covered with purple wrinkled skin. His face was deformed and unclear, and his mouth was full of sharp teeth. Looking at the purple monster floating in the sky, Peter nodded solemnly. "You're right. After being charged by your power bank, he has become more difficult to deal with." He instantly labeled the Martian Manhunter a pig teammate. After absorbing the Martian Manhunter's ability, David flew towards Peter. Peter took a few steps back, his muscles bulged, and quickly pulled out a metal lamppost on the roadside and smashed it at David. Dang! The powerful attack was easily blocked by David's outstretched arm. David grabbed the lamppost with his backhand and smashed Peter directly. "Did you hear it?" At Padrick Farm, Zoo raised his head and asked Clark. "What?" Clark blinked and asked in confusion. The two were playing flying chess in the room, and Clark was racking his brains to think about strategies because of continuous failures. "Dad," Zoo suddenly sensed something and felt a strong sense of uneasiness in his heart. A sense of insecurity, as if walking on thin ice, invaded him. It seemed that he could break through the ice and fall into the abyss at any time. Although he didn't understand why he had this feeling. "Dad hasn't come back yet." Azu stood up with a worried look on his face, leaning on the window to look outside. It began to rain, and the misty rain and fog came in. The rumbling sound in the distance seemed to be thunder, but also seemed to be an alarm in his heart. Clark said, "The Godfather said that he went to visit Mr. Luther's house. I must go and see." Azu made a decision in his heart, changed his clothes and shoes as quickly as possible, and prepared to go to Luther's house. Clark also hurried to catch up. "John, what happened? I don't know how to describe it." Azu's uneasiness in his heart became more serious. "My sense of security seems to be gone. The sense of security that only my father can give me, the feeling that he can always pick me up, now it's gone. I don't know why. I must see my father. Chapter 56. It's all my fault that I can't fly. The scene changed. David grabbed Peter's shoulders and threw him to the ground. With a loud bang, Peter's body turned into a black line, rolling and plowing a deep furrow on the ground, until he crashed into an electric tower and the electric sparks flew everywhere, and his retreating figure barely stopped. Although his body has super defense and is harder than steel, he still feels that every part of his body is transmitting a burning pain to his brain. Taking a deep breath, he stared at David, whose eyes were emitting purple light, and staggered to his feet. With a loud bang, David came to Peter. "Dad, I'm going to send you to hell," the horse and old David, with his wrinkled face, made an unclear and weird voice. Peter, Martian Manhunter, who was lying on the ground and weak, saw Peter's confused expression and explained, "Ahem, he will have the memory of the person who is absorbed." Peter nodded when he heard this. Maybe this guy absorbed the abilities of Clark and John, so he has some of the memories of the two. "I don't have an ugly son like you," Peter said as he threw a punch and hit the other person hard. Bang! David hit the ground with a deafening sound. Peter moved to the power plant as fast as possible, grabbed a car, and smashed it at the other person. Boom! The car hit the ground heavily, and smoke and dust quickly spread around with the explosion. The next second, Peter hadn't caught the other person's trace. David, who was more than twice as fast, moved in front of him in an instant. Peter quickly put his arms on his chest to resist, but was still punched out. The parasitic monster directly blew up his defense, and Peter flew out with a bang, and then fell to the ground and kept rolling. Bang! 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 The objects in the power plant suffered misfortune and were hit continuously. The walls, machinery and equipment were destroyed by Peter and the kinetic energy of his body. Finally, his body hit a step in the factory with a loud bang. The stone steps were splashed by the rocks he smashed, and the dust quickly spread. Peter lay on the damaged steps, breathing heavily, and his whole body was in uncontrollable pain. David fell from the sky like a rocket. As he landed, a piece of soil on the ground was rustled by being stepped on. Just as David was about to continue to attack Peter, he suddenly stopped in place and turned his head to look to the left. The next moment, a blast that seemed to shake the space resounded throughout the space. A wall in the front left suddenly exploded, and a figure rushed towards David. In the concrete and steel bars produced by the broken wall, Azu roared and hugged David's chest with both hands. Caught off guard, David felt as if he was hit by a locomotive. The two rushed forward, smashing everything in their path. With a loud bang, Zu pushed David into a warehouse in the power plant. Amidst the rumbling noise, the room that usually stored sundries began to collapse, and wooden boards and steel castings poured down from the air like flooded mud and sand. The angry Zu suppressed the parasitic monster, making it unable to get up, and punched it in the face with all his strength. "How dare you!" Zu's young face was twisted by extreme anger, and his fist hit the opponent's eyes, and purple blood spurted out. Damage, another punch hit the opponent's chin, causing the parasitic monster to scream in pain. My father, the last punch almost exhausted all of Zu's strength, hitting the opponent's face and flesh festering. David was directly stressed by the three punches. He tried to mobilize all his strength, turned over with a sudden push of his waist, and pressed Azu under him with his backhand. The huge palm pressed Azu's head, pressed it into the ground, and began to absorb Azu's energy. Although his head was pressed to absorb his vitality, Azu still gritted his teeth and held his red neck to struggle hard. With a painful roar, the red laser in Azu's eyes spewed superheat and shot towards the opponent. Zula, the hot sight that could burn the air directly hit David's face. He was hit hard before he could react. After a muffled groan, he flew out diagonally. On the other side, Peter had already stood up. After a short rest just now, his physical strength was restored to a certain extent. Taking advantage of the moment when the parasitic demon was hit by Azu's hot sight, Peter stood up at lightning speed, moved in front of the opponent, and punched the opponent. The powerful attack knocked the parasite into the wall, making a deafening sound. Boom! The wall and glass seemed to be hit by a bomb, making a loud rumbling sound, burying the parasite inside. Peter, who was breathing heavily, looked at his eldest son who was also in a state of embarrassment. "John, leave here, now." Without bothering to find out why Azu appeared, Peter told him to go home quickly. The worst situation now is that he is left here alone with the Martian hunter. There is no need to let John die in vain. Although his character is sometimes despicable, the feelings he has for a son he has raised for 7 years are not fake. No. Dad, I won't leave. Azu wiped the dirt off his face, panting, and said stubbornly, I promised you that if necessary, I can sacrifice for you. Dad, you said that a man's promise must count. Although he was young, Azu knew that Peter wanted him to leave and then sacrifice. He was not afraid of death. After all, everyone's life alarm clock will ring. But what he feared was that his father's alarm clock would ring before his. No one will sacrifice, and no one asks you to sacrifice for others. John, are you not going to listen to me? As soon as Peter finished speaking, there was a loud bang, and the parasitic monster broke through the buried ruins and rushed over to grab his shoulder. Peter immediately grabbed the other's throat with his backhand. Just as he was about to exert his strength, he suddenly felt weak and exhausted. Fuck, Peter cursed in Chinese, and was grabbed by the shoulder by the parasitic monster and flew directly into the sky. Dad, Azu was shocked to see the parasitic monster and Peter flying high in the sky. He stretched out his hand to catch the two, but forgot the fact that he could not fly. Azu, who was extremely annoyed, slapped himself in the face. It was all his fault that he didn't learn to fly. Chapter 57. Dad, I've got you. Azu paced back and forth anxiously, constantly muttering to himself, I can do it, because I am a native of my country, the son of Peter Patrick, and I can do anything as long as I want. After standing still, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Recall the feeling of the first flight. Forget the fear. Dad needs me now. I can do it. Azu closed his eyes but did not abandon his distracting thoughts. The fear was like a tsunami hundreds of meters high, beating against his heart. In addition, every part of his body seemed to be under a strong synaptic impact, suppressing every nerve ending in his body. Bang! Azu, who was gradually falling into a violent mood, could not help but punch the ground viciously. The Martian manhunter next to him panted and looked at the irritable Azu, and said to him, Believe me, John, if you want to save your father, you can't do it if you can't calm down. You have great potential. I knew it when we first met. No, you don't know me at all. Azu's tone was a little irritable. Not at all. Martian manhunter struggled to prop up his upper body and said to him, I know you, because I also have this talent. John, this is not my talent. Azu now hated his incompetence very much. This is your talent, Martian manhunter continued to guide Azu. In fact, it is. Sometimes in order to get something, you must lose it first. Strength and wisdom are bred by courage. If you are afraid of losing, just treat it as if you have lost everything now. The only thing you can have is courage. Go, John. Fly. Azu listened to Martian manhunter's words, and something in his heart seemed to be touched. Courage. He was stunned for a moment and repeated the word in his mouth. Suddenly, he could feel his lungs expanding, like a balloon facing the nozzle of an oxygen tank. The huge ups and downs of the air sucked his body in like a whale. Cold, bright, and powerful breaths. The dirt and debris around him floated up one after another, trembling rhythmically with his breathing. I can try it again. With some confidence in himself, Azu took a deep breath, put his feet inwards, and took a takeoff posture. The next second, his body suddenly jumped into the sky. Boom! The air made a tearing explosion, and Azu instantly broke through the air barrier and flew into the sky. There was a whistling wind in his ears, and the turbulent air blew past his side. The black clouds under the night sky kept expanding in front of his eyes. Azu, who flew into the sky, was filled with unspeakable shock in his heart. The whistling noise of the turbulent air was like the sound of sleeping in the heart of a tornado, and it seemed like the sound of suddenly descending to the bottom of a turbulent river at night. Regardless of experiencing the shock brought by the flight, Azu continued to accelerate during the flight, piercing through the clouds, and flew up to the limit he could reach. Boom! 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 The sound of explosions breaking the sound barrier continued to sound, and the air barrier was broken, and the piercing roar resounded in the night sky. On the other side, Peter was grabbed by the shoulder by the parasite and taken to the sky. As the opponent continued to accelerate, the figures of the two quickly broke through the clouds. Peter, whose vitality was absorbed, endured the pain and fatigue in his body and punched the opponent. The parasite grabbed his fist and made a mocking sound. Dad, I am now extremely powerful and can devour everything, really? Look at this, silly son. Peter opened his clenched fist, and a ring-sized kryptonite appeared in his palm. After absorbing Clark's abilities and memories, the parasite was shocked to see the kryptonite in Peter's hand. He knew that this thing restrained Clark's abilities. You The parasite opened his mouth in shock. He never thought that Peter would carry kryptonite with him. This is something that restrains his son. He instantly labeled Peter as a scumbag in his heart. If Peter knew what the other party was thinking, he would definitely defend himself. I just coated the surface of the kryptonite with a layer of lead and collected it as an ordinary ornament. I definitely had no intention of dealing with my son. Bang! Peter held the kryptonite fist and punched the other party on the chin. The two hugged each other. In order to prevent himself from falling, Peter grabbed the other party's shoulder with one hand while attacking. The parasitic demon, whose mind was disturbed by the kryptonite, suddenly felt a roar in his ears and black in front of his eyes. Tell me, how does Dad's fist taste? While mocking the other party, Peter seized the other party's flaw. The muscles of his right arm bulged, gathered all his strength, aimed at the parasitic demon's head, and punched it. The parasitic demon, who was beaten and angry, endured the severe pain of being hit, roared, grabbed Peter's arm and threw him to the ground. Peter, who could not fly, was directly thrown to the ground from a high altitude by the other party using earth throw. On the other side, Azu, who was flying in the air, also discovered his father's figure at this time. Dad, Azu's entire body turned into a super-fast meteor that broke through the air, flew out a U-shaped bend, and chased Peter, who was falling rapidly to the ground. Bang! 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 Through continuous acceleration, the flying speed has exceeded the speed of sound, making a strong explosion sound. Under the full operation, Azu's body formed a cone-shaped hot red shock wave like a speedboat in front. The shock wave rushed through the surrounding space and vibrated his eardrum. Although he had a body of steel, he could still feel the pressure of the atmospheric pressure on him. The whistling wind and thunderous noises were all around his eyes. At this time, Peter was bending over and moving towards the atmosphere at high speed. With super defense, he had already made protective actions for the impact of falling. What he didn't expect was that with a burst of air, a figure that he couldn't even see clearly rushed towards him at a high speed. Bang! Azu rushed over and hugged him tightly. The strong impact force, even Peter with super defense, felt that he was going to be blown apart for a moment. Dad, I caught you, Azu made an excited sound, and shouted excitedly while holding Peter and flying down. Peter forgot the pain in his body for a moment, and his face was full of astonishment. This kid actually learned to fly. Yes, you did it, John, Peter coughed, and forced down the urge to vomit blood, and complained in his heart, if an ordinary person was caught by you like this, I'm afraid his body would have been broken into 3 pieces. Although he complained about Azu's rough rescue, he was still very moved. In order to save himself, this kid did something that he couldn't do before. You know, I have trained Azu countless times before, and each time ended in failure. As a result, this time he actually overcame his fear of heights. How did you overcome your fear, John? Peter asked him. No, Dad, I didn't, it's just that my courage outweighs my fear. Chapter 58 God is not here, God on Earth. Mr. Jones, are you okay? Clark finally arrived at the scene, looking at the messy ground that looked like it had been hit by a bomb. His eyes widened in shock. 10 minutes ago, he and Azu went to Luther Manor. After learning that something happened at the manor, he and Azu separated to look for Peter. When he arrived later, he saw the messy scene after the war. Clark quickly helped the Martian manhunter on the ground. Mr. Jones, what happened? Where are the Godfather and John? The Martian manhunter covered his chest, endured the discomfort and pointed to the sky. There in the sky, Clark was suddenly struck by lightning, and his whole body was not well. Did God take the Godfather and John away? No, they are fighting parasites in the sky. I didn't say they went to heaven. The Martian manhunter was speechless. That's good, Clark breathed a sigh of relief, then scratched his hair in distress. It's a pity I can't fly. Martian hunter didn't notice Clark's distress. He looked up at the sky, frowned and said, after the parasite absorbed my vitality, it is now extremely powerful. Even if you and your son join forces, it won't be that easy. Clark asked him nervously, then what should we do? There's only one way, find energy that he can't absorb. Martian hunter was extremely weak and his voice was intermittent. Here, this power station is a nuclear power station. It has been temporarily closed, but the nuclear reactor is still reacting. Have you heard of Chernobyl? Clark nodded. I heard from the Godfather that it was a tragedy and many Soviet workers gave their lives. Yes, that's the problem caused by the reactor. Martian manhunter covered his chest and said to him, The reactor will produce plutonium-239 by bombarding uranium-238 with fast neutrons. If the parasite absorbs plutonium-239, it will push his body to its limit. In fact, he has absorbed so much energy now, and he should be close to the limit. I don't quite understand, Mr. Jones. Do you mean to use the substances produced in the reactor to deal with him? Clark looked at Martian Manhunter in shock. Will that cause a disaster like Chernobyl? No, it won't. Martian Manhunter stared at the power station in front of him. But, someone needs to enter the nuclear reactor to take out plutonium-239. Are you willing to do it, Clark? Martian Manhunter knew that Kryptonians would not be irradiated by nuclear radiation, but Clark didn't know. He only knew that the workers who were irradiated in Chernobyl had a miserable end. Clark, who was confused, suddenly fell into a difficult choice. I don't know. He took a step back, his eyes full of panic and confusion. Yes, I understand, Clark. It takes a lot of courage to make such a choice. Martian Manhunter expressed his understanding. He took a deep breath and sat on the ground, allowing himself to recover as soon as possible, ready to enter the power plant to take out plutonium-239. Mr. Jones, Clark, who was struggling fiercely in his heart, suddenly asked Martian Manhunter, if I die, will I be one of the 144,000 seats? What? Clark looked at him hopefully. The Godfather once said that many people died in God's green earth, but he only prepared seats for 144,000 of them. If I die, will I be one of them? No, you won't die, kid. Martian Manhunter looked at Clark in shock. He probably guessed what Clark was thinking. Clark exhaled, and after making a decision in his heart, his fear of death also disappeared a lot. If I can save the Godfather and Zoo, I am willing to do it, Clark continued. The Godfather said that when I make a decision, whether it is right or wrong, you and I will always lose something. I understand, Mr. Jones. Please tell me how to take out the plutonium-239 you mentioned. Are you willing to sacrifice yourself for your family? Clark, yes, I am. Although Clark was a little scared, he still suppressed his fear. This is the price, the Godfather said, isn't it? The Martian Manhunter's heart was stirred, and he looked at Clark in shock for a long time without saying a word. A Kryptonian who is willing to sacrifice for the Earthlings? Strength, divinity and humanity, mercy and sacrifice. Maybe God is not here. Clark, will you be the God on Earth? After remembering what the Martian Manhunter told him, Clark rushed to the reactor of the power plant as fast as possible. Soon, he took out 2 glimmering stones from the nuclear reactor, according to the steps that the Martian Manhunter told him. The moment he touched it, an unspeakable feeling spread throughout his body. Clark pessimistically thought that he would die soon. But the battle is not over yet, and he cannot show weakness now. Clark suppressed the urge to cry and quickly left the power plant with 2 pieces of plutonium-239. Bang! As soon as he left the power plant, he saw a surprising scene. Azu held Peter and landed on the ground. The next second, the smile on Clark's face disappeared. The parasite also fell from a high altitude and was about to attack Peter and Azu. Clark looked at the plutonium-239 in his hand and subconsciously shouted, "Hey!" The parasite turned around in astonishment, and what he saw was Clark with his hands behind his back. Peter didn't expect Clark to appear at the scene. "Clark, why are you here too?" "Because I want to protect you, Godfather." Clark took a deep breath, with a firm expression on his little face. "Parasite, come on, if you want to hurt my family, you have to get past me first." The parasite, who was provoked by him, roared angrily and suddenly turned around and jumped towards him. Bang! 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 The parasite's legs shook the ground and approached him with an extremely fast posture. Facing the terrifying parasitic demon, Clark tried to stay calm. At the moment when the other party grabbed his arm, he suddenly raised his hands behind his back to the front. When the parasitic demon grabbed Clark's hands, he also grabbed the 2 pieces of plutonium-239 in his hands. Originally, he wanted to absorb Clark's vitality, but he didn't expect to absorb the energy of plutonium-239. Vast and huge energy, as well as radiation waves that were enough to cause ordinary people's bodies to collapse, burst out instantly, and purple lightning-like arcs surrounded the 2 people. The blazing light that seemed to be able to completely cover the night spread out from the place where the 2 people touched. Accompanied by the strong wind and lightning, Clark looked up, endured the pain and looked at the parasitic demon who was roaring in pain. "I'm sorry. Thank you readers for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Thank you. I hope everyone has a good weekend." Chapter 59 Clark's Good Boy and Bad Boy. Clark apologized to the other party with an expression of reluctance. This sentence was like the fuse that detonated the bomb, accompanied by a dull sound. The parasitic demon that absorbed too much energy had irregular arcs lingering around its body, gradually crystallizing. Finally, the other party looked at Clark in despair, roared, and exploded on the spot. The dazzling white light instantly lit up the entire night. At the moment of the explosion, Peter used super speed to move in front of Clark, grabbed his back and protected him in his arms. The shock wave generated by the explosion shook the surrounding space. Boom! The body of the parasitic demon was instantly turned into dust with a violent explosion. For a long while, Azu stared blankly at the purple dust floating in the air, and said to himself, "Have we won?" Ignoring the pain and burning sensation in his body, Peter lowered his head and asked Clark, "Clark, are you okay?" Clark nodded uneasily. "I'm fine." "Is it dead, Godfather?" Peter touched Clark's head with mixed feelings and said, "Yes, it's dead. This kid is really a newborn calf who is not afraid of tigers." He dared to use this method to deal with the parasitic demon, and it was successful. If the parasitic demon did not intend to absorb his vitality at the beginning, I'm afraid things would develop in another direction. It should be said that this kid really has a bit of a protagonist's aura. You shouldn't be so impulsive, Clark. This method is very dangerous. I know, Godfather. Clark knew that his behavior just now was a bit risky. But when he saw the parasitic demon was about to attack the injured Godfather, he felt for a moment that he jumped into the Smallwool River again. The water was dark and freezing cold, as if a pair of terrifying hands grabbed him, pulled him forward, and pulled him down. In order to get rid of this drowning feeling, he did it subconsciously. Clark apologized to Peter with a guilty conscience. "Sorry, Godfather, I shouldn't be so impulsive." "No, don't apologize, Clark," Peter immediately said, although it was a bit impulsive. "Clark, you did a good job." Ahem. Peter was talking to Clark, and the Martian hunter next to him coughed and stood up. "Thank you, Mr. Patrick, Clark, and John, your courage and wisdom saved me. If it weren't for the help of the father and son," he thought he would capsize. Azu asked the other party curiously, "Mr. Jones, are you really a federal detective?" At this time, the Martian hunter was wearing the image of the Black John Jones, and Azu would not think that the other party was really a federal detective. Actually, the black skin on the surface of the Martian hunter's body gradually turned green. Martian Manhunter, revealing his true appearance, introduced himself to the others. "I am not from Earth. I am a Martian, the last Martian, and my real name is Ron Rance." Clark and Zu looked at each other's green skin in shock, and when they heard each other say that they were the last Martians, they were stunned. After hearing the other party's self-introduction, Peter fell into deep thought. This guy has similar superpowers to Clark and Zu, and he seems to have a good character. If he asks this guy to be a nanny on the farm, he can not only protect Zu and Clark, but also teach and train the two of them related superpowers. In addition, this guy is a black man, and if the farm is busy on weekdays, he can also work part-time as a farmer. Thinking of this, he looked at Martian Manhunter with a burning gaze. But how can he convince this guy to come to his farm as a nanny? The next day, early in the morning, because of the parasitic demon, Peter asked for a day off for Clark and Zu to rest at home. Clark was watching TV absent-mindedly, and Zu put a box of popcorn in front of him. "Where's the Godfather?" Clark looked up at Azu, not showing much interest in popcorn. "Dad said to hire a nanny, but I don't think we need one." Zu stuffed the popcorn into his mouth nonchalantly and said to Clark, "You look a little unhappy." Clark's little face was slightly sad. "A little bit. After all, I killed a man yesterday. He is not a human. He is an alien creature, and aliens are not considered human." Zu told Clark his opinion. "Don't worry, Clark, you are not a bad boy." Clark watched the program about Hawaiian volcanoes on TV and nodded. "I am not, and I don't want to be a bad boy." Zu put down the popcorn. "No one likes to be a bad boy. Dad said that bad boys are like bad apples. People will not allow bad boys to continue to grow. If people think you are going to grow into a real bad apple, they will plan to cut it down before the tree bears fruit." "Well, this should be a metaphor that Dad said. You know, Clark, a metaphor. They think that one day you will grow up and become a bad guy who will hurt others, and they will destroy you." Zu repeated to Clark the alarmist words his father used to teach him. "Don't be a bad boy." Clark asked in surprise. "Is this true?" "I don't know," Azu thought. But he didn't answer like that, but said seriously, "Of course, but don't worry, if you don't want to be like that, You won't be like that. The script of fate has never been written in advance. He racked his brains to recall what Peter said to him. Dad said that life leaves room for choice. Unless you really give up on yourself, you can completely control your fate. Well, I want to be a good boy. Then be a good boy. Will you help me? Azu patted his chest. Of course, I will help you not to be a bad bird. Thank you. Clark thanked Azu sincerely. Azu was a little unaccustomed to such direct sincerity. That? Clark, thank you for saving me and my father. If you hadn't let the parasite explode yesterday, maybe my father and I would be in danger. Just as the two were discussing good kids and bad kids, the door was pushed open with a creak. A black man wearing sunglasses pushed the door in. Clark and Azu looked at John Jones standing at the door in surprise. Martian Hunter, who was carrying a suitcase, took off his sunglasses and said to the two stunned people, "Good morning, John and Clark." Mr. Jones. Azu looked at him in surprise. "Are you working on the farm?" Martian Hunter's expression froze, and his good mood was immediately ruined. What a bad boy. Chapter 60, Martian Manhunter, the housekeeping master. "No, I'm here to be your teacher, a tutor." Martian Manhunter shrugged his shoulders. "Your father invited me." Hearing each other's words, Clark and Azu looked at each other. Clark was a little worried about Peter's wallet. As we all know, tutoring is very expensive. Not to mention inviting a Martian to be a teacher for himself and Azu. The Godfather must have paid a lot. What Clark didn't know was that Peter only used a box of Oreos to get him. According to Peter's memory of his previous life, Martian Manhunter seemed to be particularly keen on Oreos. So he brought a box of Oreos to visit him, and successfully convinced him without any effort. In the words of Martian Manhunter, he was not convinced by the cookies, but felt that John and Clark needed more professional guidance. "What can you teach us, Mr. Jones?" Azu asked him curiously. At first, he thought the other party was black and had some resistance, but now that he knew the other party was a Martian, most of the grudges in his heart disappeared. As for whether Martian Manhunter was an alien creature, he had automatically ignored it. Anyway, he just talked nonsense to Clark. "I can teach you the proper flying skills, John. This is your only chance," Martian Hunter said with a serious expression. "Your talent is now showing, but you don't know how to use it correctly. And you, Clark," he looked at Clark, "your talent is unparalleled. I can guide you to find the changes in your body more easily." Clark and Azu looked at each other, and suddenly had a bad premonition. "I'm afraid that life will not be so easy in the future. Just dealing with the teachers at school is already a headache, and now there is an additional tutor." Azu immediately frowned. He had to take time out to play and earn pocket money on the farm. How could he have time to accept the tutor's guidance? At night, Peter looked at the sumptuous dinner in front of him in shock. Clark and Azu were also confused. The large table of delicious food with a rich aroma in front of them was really their dinner? 2 soft fried eggs fried on both sides, 2 buttermilk pancakes as big as a manhole cover, 4 sausages, whole wheat toast, and a toasted cinnamon bun on another separate plate. Except for the cinnamon buns, everything else was covered with the maple syrup. With surprise, Clark tasted a bite of the sausage. The authentic, genuine maple syrup and the meaty aroma of the sausage immediately filled Clark's taste buds. His eyes lit up. This maple syrup was like it was directly taken from the tree, not the kind bought from the grocery store that would make people feel uncomfortable. Clark was often urged by Azu to secretly buy maple syrup at the grocery store. Ahem. Peter turned his eyes away from the food and said to the 2 naughty children who were eating crazily, "John, Clark, eat slowly and don't eat like a lumberjack." The 2 nodded repeatedly, but there was no intention of stopping the action in their hands. Peter looked at Martian Manhunter, who took off his apron and sat on the dining table, and couldn't help asking, "Mr. Jones, have you ever been a chef in a restaurant?" "No, I just like to study cooking techniques." Martian Manhunter elegantly cut the soft eggs with a knife and fork, and said, "Actually, I'm better at making cookies." Peter nodded, looked around the clean and tidy room, and then looked down at the sausages on the plate. "I didn't really hire a professional nanny, did I?" If he didn't know that this guy was really Martian Manhunter, he would have thought that the other party was a housekeeping expert. After a pleasant dinner, Martian Manhunter took advantage of the night to go and teach Azu flying skills. Clark sat in front of the sofa and watched TV to kill time. A TV series called An American Werewolf in London was playing on TV. At the climax of the plot, the titular werewolf ran wildly through London's Piccadilly Circus. There was chaos and injuries, cars honking and screaming. The beast tore the terrified pedestrians to pieces and then threw them into the crowd. Click. Peter pressed the remote control to turn off the TV. This is not a TV show suitable for you, Clark. Seeing that the TV was turned off, Clark scratched his head and said to him, Godfather, Azu said this TV show is very good. Peter, it seems that Azu is itching again. Not only did he not curb his love of horror movies, but he also tried to pass this bad habit on to Clark. Sitting on the sofa, Peter coughed. This is not suitable for you at this age, Clark, although Clark had just turned an alien parasite into powder yesterday. Well, actually, I think so too. Clark couldn't help complaining to Peter. The werewolf looks like a brainless fool, and he hurts innocent people recklessly. Peter asked him, so do you think he's a bad guy? This werewolf? Yes, Godfather, he is a bad guy, although he is the protagonist. Peter nodded and said, but sometimes, we can't control ourselves. Just like the parasite this time, he controlled Dr. David. If you are also controlled by the parasite to hurt others, what do you want others to do? Clark lowered his head and thought for a while, then raised his head and said firmly, I won't do that, but if that really happens, he clenched his fist and exhaled. Dad, do you remember that green stone? The one in Lana's necklace? Oh, Peter nodded. Clark said with awareness, if I really hurt my family like Dr. David or the werewolf, Godfather, you can beat me with that stone, just like what Azu did to me that day. Peter was slightly stunned. He didn't expect Clark to be so aware. Is this why you gave the kryptonite to Batman for safekeeping when you grew up? Don't you know that the guy used kryptonite against you, but would he really kill you? Shaking his head, Peter suppressed the thought in his mind and comforted Clark. No, you won't. The Godfather will protect you and prevent this from happening. Thank you, Godfather. I won't be parasitized by the parasite either, Clark said very confidently. Soon he thought of another thing, and his little face immediately drooped. Godfather, will I really not be irradiated? Although Peter had explained to him that he was immune to nuclear radiation, Clark still cared a lot. Yes, your body is immune to radiation, Clark. Peter's expression became serious. But Clark, you shouldn't have agreed to John Jones at that time. If you don't have the ability to be immune to radiation, think about what will happen. Clark, you are not ready to be a savior now. I understand, Godfather. Mr. Jones asked me to choose. In fact, I don't like to make choices. It seems that every time I make a choice, I will lose something. Just like this time, I thought I would be exposed to nuclear radiation if I chose to do it, Clark said frustratedly. But, Godfather, you told me that we are in a choice every moment, just like mice and monkeys in the laboratory. Peter was slightly stunned. What mice and monkeys? Thanks to Shushan Yao Dao Iao and Zing, for the reward, and the hard-working readers for spending money. Thank you for the readers' votes, and I really appreciate your support. Chapter 61 God Bless America. Godfather, the story you told me before, Clark blinked and said, you said that if the mice and monkeys in the laboratory are given the illusion of choice, they can usually live healthily, even if they only have two choices, mild electric shock and severe electric shock, but at least they can feel the difference in the results, so they are full of joy and live more happily. If these mice and monkeys are not given room for choice and are just kept receiving electric shocks, they will become more and more anxious. Clark exhaled. I know, Godfather, you want to tell me that if our lives have no choices, it will be a mess. Peter was stunned for a moment, then nodded slowly. He didn't expect Clark to have such philosophical thoughts. It seems that this kid has a lot of insights from Nietzsche. Choices are indeed difficult, Clark, but, Peter organized his words, no matter what, as long as you choose, there is no right or wrong in regret. The you of the past will not satisfy the you of the present, and the you of the present will not satisfy the you of the future. It's just Clark, just follow your own heart. Clark nodded when he heard this. He probably understood what the Godfather meant. Looking at the dark night outside, he confided his inner thoughts to Peter. Actually, Godfather, I wanted to be an ordinary child at first. At first, my super hearing appeared, and I thought I was sick until I heard the voice of the neighbor's child next door. Be an ordinary boy, with bruised knees, wheezing and coughing, just like everyone else. Clark rarely showed his weakness. Dad said that I must have my own mission and bring different changes to the world. Godfather, can I really do it? I'm afraid that I will make the wrong choice and disappoint you. You will bring different changes to the world, Clark, but don't put pressure on yourself. You don't owe anyone. Peter comforted the confused Clark. No matter what choice you make, it will not affect your future. Clark stared at Peter's eyes with burning eyes and asked unconfidently, "Really? Godfather?" "Of course, the Godfather has never lied." Peter patted Clark on the shoulder gently. "The Godfather and your parents will never be disappointed in you." "Thank you." The next day, early in the morning, in the school corridor, Clark thanked Zoo. Zoo just helped him to block the harassment of Whitney Fordham. Whitney is the king of the children in Smallwood Elementary School, and has been making trouble for Clark recently. At first, Clark missed the school bus, and Whitney made faces at him and taunted him in the bus. Unexpectedly, when the school bus arrived at the school, Clark was already strolling on the sidewalk, which made Whitney angry. Then there was the school bus incident, and the school began to spread the news that Clark and Zoo had superpowers. Whitney brought his lackeys to find Clark to prove that he did not have any special abilities. "You're welcome." Zoo put his school bag in the locker and said to Clark, "I want to thank you. This is the most insignificant thing we can give to others. If you really want to thank me, Clark, you can help me mow the lawn on the farm. Of course, I will give you half of Dad's reward." Zoo turned into a black-hearted capitalist at this time. Mr. Jones wants to train my flying ability now, and I don't have time to make pocket money. Last night, Zoo followed a Martian hunter to fully experience the excitement of flying. But when he thought about not having time to make pocket money in the future, his mood became bad. "Okay," Clark nodded and agreed to Zoo's request. "Anyway, he has plenty of time." "Thank you, Clark. My brother, you are the real hero." Zoo pointed at Clark with a finger and smiled from the bottom of his heart. "That?" Zoo asked Clark happily. "So before, you didn't fight with Whitney?" Clark shook his head. "No, he pushed me down, but I didn't do it." "You should have punched him in the face." Zoo felt that Clark was a little weak. Dad said, "Don't be afraid of this kind of person." "I know, I'm not afraid." Clark said that he was not afraid of him. He brought his followers with him to prove one thing, that is, I am not an ordinary person. If I really did it, I would have fallen into his trap. That will bring even bigger trouble. Clark locked the locker door. "I won't be irritated by their clumsy methods. Maybe there is another way." Zoo's eyes narrowed. "I'll go and deal with that guy." Clark immediately stopped him. "No, John, the Godfather won't let us get into trouble. This is not trouble, we are good kids, and what we are doing now is just," Zoo said confidently. "I believe that my father supports me, too, but, John, okay, leave it to me. The most I'll do is give him 2 more panda eyes on his face, don't worry." Zoo waved at Clark and walked towards the classroom. Clark let out a helpless breath and followed Zoo's footsteps. It seems that he has to tell his godfather about this. Clark had the idea of snitching in his mind again. The TV in the classroom was broadcasting current affairs news. According to the fire bulletin issued by the Kansas Forestry and Fire Department, a wildfire called Carl broke out and spread from the forest of McPherson City. Strong winds caused the fire to gradually spread westward and swept across McPherson City. It has killed 2 people and more than 1,000 households have been evacuated. Seeing the blazing fire on the TV screen, Clark and Zoo looked at each other. The host's voice continued. Ralph Terrazas, chief of the McPherson Fire Department, said that the burned area on the northern edge of the city has exceeded 18 square kilometers, and at least 25 houses have been destroyed. "Will the wildfire spread to our town?" Zoo asked with a frown. Clark stared at the TV screen and said hesitantly, "It shouldn't. There will be firefighters to put out the fire." As soon as he finished speaking, the host's voice came from the TV. "Currently, the Kansas Fire Department has jointly dispatched nearly 165 firefighters to fight the wildfire. Meteorologists estimate that the upcoming rainy weather will help the wildfire, but the fire department spokesman said that according to the current extent of the wildfire, the effect of rainy weather is minimal." Zoo looked at the TV screen and shrugged his shoulders like Peter. "Well, may God bless America." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Zoo's Face-Changing Skill. Clark sighed and said, "Not only humans, but many animals in the forest will die. This is a very normal thing. Dad said that life will disappear one day. I remember a poem, something or other, the center is not there," Zoo said with a little frustration. "Well, I'm not a poetry lover." Clark didn't notice Zoo's expression. He suddenly felt a little depressed. Human and animal life is so fragile. Old Mr. Bill also died of illness recently, Zhu asked in surprise. You mean the old Bill who raised a zombie dog and almost bit me? Yes, the Godfather said he had DVT. DVT? What is that? It sounds like a bad movie, Clark explained to him. DVT, deep vein thrombosis. Zhu acted as if he suddenly realized something. Oh, it sounds like the name of a great band. Clark's nostrils opened slightly and he fiddled with his black-framed glasses with his fingers. Whenever he was speechless by Zhu, he would do this action involuntarily. At noon, in the gymnasium, Zhu and Clark were taking physical education class. A ginger-haired girl was pretending to knee another girl in the crotch, flat hitting her throat and flipping her onto a blue gym mat. The ground shook slightly. Another girl, with pale porcelain skin and thick black hair tied into a bun, stood up calmly from the mat, and then the two girls approached each other and bowed. Clark and Zhu sat side by side in the front, watching the two girls practice karate with the other students. The physical education teacher standing in front of the students was tall and strong. He clapped his hands and said, "Okay, everyone, repeat the 6 basic attack areas again." The students said the mantra in unison: eyes, nose, throat, groin, knees and feet. Do it again, faster. Eyes, nose, throat, groin, knees and feet. Do it again, louder. Eyes, nose, throat, groin, knees and feet. Zhu was a little bored. In his opinion, this kind of karate that strengthens the body is more like a girl's self-defense technique. As Peter often watched boxing matches, he thought this kind of training was too childish. With a sigh, he saw the whiteboard behind the teacher. The 6 words and the attack areas were listed one by one on the whiteboard. I guess if Mr. Ryan competes with Dad, he will definitely be beaten to pulp, Zhu whispered to Clark. I mean, even if Dad doesn't use much strength. Quiet, Teacher Ryan glared at Zhu, and Clark immediately sat up straight and stopped talking to Zhu. Next is free sparring. You can choose someone as a partner for sparring. Clapping his hands, Teacher Ryan indicated that the next time was free sparring time. Clark stood up and prepared to choose Zhu as a sparring partner. Unexpectedly, Zhu didn't choose him, but walked straight to another student. Hey, don't you mind if we practice together? Zhu stood in front of the tall and strong Whitney and asked him. Go away, I'm not interested in you. Whitney glanced at Zhu and prepared to practice with a follower next to her. So, are you scared? Zhu looked at him with contempt. Or are you just a pretender? You don't even dare to do something real. Provoked by Zhu, Whitney's anger immediately rose. I will beat you up, freak. Seeing Zhu planning to practice with Whitney, Clark, who knew what he was up to, immediately came up to stop him. Hey, John, you can't. Don't worry, Clark, I know what I'm doing. Zhu cast a reassuring look at Clark. Although Clark was worried, he knew that he couldn't persuade Zhu. So he had to let go of his hand and stood aside with a worried face. The two stood face to face. Zhu looked at each other expressionlessly. I will beat you to pulp. Really? Then come on. Whitney's face moved closer to him. They say you and Clark have superpowers. I don't believe in such nonsense. Come on, do it. Bang. Zhu grabbed Whitney's clothes and threw him to the ground with a bang. Whitney was knocked down and felt his head buzzing. Fortunately, Zhu didn't use much force and didn't knock him down to death. Even so, Whitney still felt very embarrassed. With a bad face, he got up as fast as he could and kicked Zhu in the groin with gritted teeth. Zhu grabbed his arm and threw him to the ground. In the process of throwing him to the ground, he punched him in the lower abdomen. Whitney, who was thrown again, felt as if his whole body was falling apart and there was a sharp pain in his lower abdomen. He covered his lower abdomen in pain, curled up into a ball, and groaned. Zhu looked down at the other person who was lying on the ground and groaning, and said coldly, you are just an incompetent, ordinary, damn idiot. Hey, the physical education teacher finally noticed the situation here. Teacher Ryan, who ran over here quickly, saw Whitney lying on the ground and groaning, and quickly bent down to check on the other person. What happened? John, he asked Zhu angrily. I don't know, Mr. Ryan, I just wanted to practice with Whitney, and he fell down like this. Zhu performed a face changing in front of Clark, and immediately changed from a frightening expression to a harmless one. Maybe Whitney's physique is a little weak, and this kind of physical education class is not suitable for him. Zhu pretended to be worried and said to the physical education teacher. The physical education teacher was confused by Zhu's expression and thought he didn't mean it. He didn't care to investigate, and hurriedly took Whitney to the infirmary. Clark was stunned to see Azu's face-changing skills, from showing an expression like a villain in the previous second to a harmless and sunny boy in the next second. How did Azu do it? This is even more incredible than the Godfather taught him to change his temperament by wearing glasses. Azu didn't know what Clark was thinking. He walked over and said, "Don't worry, Clark, this guy is fine." I controlled the strength. He was a little proud, and suddenly thought of something, and whispered to Clark, "Clark, you have to keep it a secret from me, and don't tell Dad." Clark nodded subconsciously. Okay. In the afternoon, at Patrick's farm, Martian Hunter went out to buy vegetables, and Peter stayed at home alone. He was watching the news of the wildfire on TV when the phone rang. "This is Patrick's farm." After Peter picked up the phone and listened to a few words, his brows immediately frowned. "Thanks to Abstract Pure Boy and Star, for the reward. Thank you all for your votes and messages, and bow to the readers." Chapter 63, There is no such thing as a motherland. It is just a dream of a Kansas farmer. Smallville Salon Club. Peter sat with the farmers and listened to the mayor's news about the wildfire. After receiving Jonathan's call, he rushed to the scene. The governor has signed an emergency order, mobilizing all forces to fight the fire and protect the lives and property of the people. At present, more than 500 firefighters have been mobilized to fight the fire, and 4 large fixed-wing firefighting aircraft have sprayed chemical fire-extinguishing agents on the fire area. But, he suddenly changed his tone. Weather is a key factor in the future. Kansas is shrouded in record-high temperatures, and the wind direction changes greatly, which increases the difficulty of firefighting. The mayor looked around the crowd. "So for everyone's safety, it is recommended that everyone evacuate before noon tomorrow." Hearing the mayor's request for everyone to evacuate, the crowd below immediately whispered. Jonathan frowned as he listened to the mayor's speech. The farm suffered a lot of losses from the previous livestock attacks. "If the wildfire reaches Smallville now, don't worry, Jonathan," Peter comforted Jonathan, who was worried. "The fire may not spread here." Jonathan nodded. "Well, I hope things won't get that bad." After Peter said a few words to him, he turned his eyes to the TV in the club. The TV was showing the scene of the wildfire. In an instant, Peter caught a glimpse of a figure flashing in the flames. A person covered in flames appeared in the blazing fire and was able to move freely. Staring at the TV screen, Peter was stunned for a moment, then showed a thoughtful expression. At the same time, Smallville Elementary School. In the principal's office, Martian Hunter took off his hat and shook hands with Assistant Principal Henry Greer. As an assistant principal, Henry Greer's main job is to maintain school discipline. When disciplining students, he always wanted to create a lovely John Wayne image, but it was not successful. John Wayne, film and television actor, famous for playing tough guys in westerns and war films. John Jones, "I'm Peter Patrick's butler." Martian Manhunter said that since Peter was not there, he came to the school as a parent to deal with Azu's affairs. Henry looked at the black man with extraordinary temperament in front of him and was stunned for a moment. After coughing, he said to Martian Manhunter, "Peter Patrick was once my student, I remember." He smiled apologetically while sitting behind the desk. "There are too many students. After 4 or 5 years, they all become the same. You will call a boy his brother's name, and so on. There is nothing you can do." "That's right, Mr. Greer." Martian Manhunter nodded in agreement. When the assistant principal was telling him about the conflict between Azu and Whitney, the door was pushed open roughly, and Whitney's father walked in aggressively. Harrison, who was wearing a custom-made Savile Row brown suit, greeted the assistant principal and asked Martian Manhunter unceremoniously, "Are you John Patrick's parent?" Martian Manhunter said calmly, "I am his butler." "Very good, I'm quite busy lately and I have to appear in court in 50 minutes, so let's get straight to the point." Harrison, who is a lawyer by profession, said impatiently, "John hurt my son roughly and insulted him. I demand that John publicly apologize to my son, and then the school must punish him." Martian Hunter glanced at the astonished assistant principal and said calmly, "As far as I know, Mr. Harrison, your son has been detained after school 74 times, 12 of which were for bullying unsociable students, and he skipped 51 of them." Martian Hunter said something that shocked Harrison. Once he was suspended because he put a firecracker in a girl's shoe. A little girl named Irma Swope almost lost 2 toes because of this little prank. The girl named Swope had a cleft lip. When he mentioned that the girl had a cleft lip, his tone was full of coldness. Mr. Harrison, you obviously don't realize that the law in your eyes protects both your son and John. Once you apologize and compensate for a physical and verbal abuse, then, I believe the school will also demand compensation from Whitney for the same reason." As he said that, he turned his gaze to the assistant principal, Mr. Greener. "Am I right?" The assistant principal swallowed and looked at the Martian hunter in shock. He didn't understand why the black man in front of him knew so much information. Although his mind was in a mess, he reacted quickly. After seeing that the Martian hunter had the upper hand, he immediately said to Harrison seriously, "I think Mr. Jones is right, you guys." Harrison opened his mouth wide and looked at the Martian hunter. "Don't even think about getting away with such despicable means, you." He forced himself to hold back the words that were about to come out of his mouth. He hesitated for a moment, knowing that he could not take advantage of this black man, and finally walked out of the room in disappointment. Zhu soon learned that the Martian manhunter had dealt a heavy blow to Whitney's father in the office. This changed his impression of this butler a lot. The next day, when the whole family packed up and went to Metropolis to avoid the wildfire, he secretly thanked the Martian manhunter. "Thank you, Mr. Jones. Your power should not be used in this way, John. I taught you to discover your potential, but not for you to do this." While packing his luggage, the Martian manhunter said to him, "You should learn from Clark and use your abilities with caution." Zhu scratched his head and put on a harmless expression. "I didn't mean it, Mr. Jones." As the two were talking, Peter came over and asked, "How is it? Are your things packed?" "Okay." Zhu quickly glanced at the Martian hunter, signaling him to keep it a secret for him. Looking at Zhu's expression, the Martian hunter was speechless. "You still want to keep it a secret? Your dad already knew it." Peter patted Zhu on the shoulder and said to him, "See if there is anything you forgot to bring. We may be out for a while before we come back, Dad." Zhu looked at everything in the room melancholy. "Will we come back?" Peter touched his head. "Of course we will come back. This is our home. We will live in Metropolis for a while." "Don't you like big cities?" "No, I'm just a dad. I just want to be a Kansas farmer on the farm, protecting the farm." "And Dad, oh, didn't you say you wanted to be a superhero before?" "John, don't you want to now?" "No, superheroes are not real, I think, Dad. It's just a dream that many people have." In the new week, I would like to ask for the recommendation votes and monthly votes from the readers. Thank you. Book recommendation, Zutian, Invincible, starting from the 9 Dragons Pulling the Coffin, an old author of Zutian Liu. It is worth reading. Interested readers can click the link below. Chapter 64, 2 Boys' Dreams. People like to dream. Peter organized his words and said to Zhu, "I once knew 2 boys who also dreamed of becoming superheroes." Zhu asked curiously, "Who are they?" "Dad, one is the dream of an ordinary Kansas boy. He thinks that as long as he keeps doing good things, the world will fully accept him. The other is the dream of a teenager who lost his parents in crime alley at the age of 8. He thinks that as long as he keeps fighting criminals, the city will become better and better." "Are their dreams all wrong, Dad?" "I don't know. Some people think they are wrong, and some people think that there is nothing wrong with it. The only thing that is certain is that this is their choice and persistence." Peter paused and said to Zhu, "They will all rest and fall, but they will not fall into the abyss. Their goal has always been to the top of the mountain." Zhu thought for a while and said in a firm tone, "My goal has always been the top of the mountain, Dad. Dad believes in you." After Peter said a few words to Zhu, he went to other rooms to pack up. Some paperback books in the study, works by Bobby Bright, Stephen King, The Catcher in the Rye, Slaughterhouse 5 by Robert McKinnon, were all put into the box. Knock. 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 Martian manhunter knocked on the door from outside. "Do you mind if we chat, Peter?" Peter looked up at Martian manhunter. "Of course, we haven't had a good chat yet, Mr. Jones. Maybe it's because we both had some prejudices against each other at the beginning." Martian manhunter walked in and picked up a copy of The Catcher in the Rye. "I thought you were not a qualified father, but it seems I was wrong." Martian manhunter admitted his mistake. "You will guide John to a different heroic path." Peter looked at him in surprise. "Would he be so great?" "No, Mr. Jones, I just don't want John to be a jerk." Peter shook his head, put the book in the suitcase, and asked Martian manhunter casually, "Have you ever been a teacher, Mr. Jones?" He remembered that the Martian manhunter was very caring and had worked as a teacher. "Yes, I used to be a teacher in school. I like this profession because I can have a sense of existence by letting a child make his own life choices." Martian manhunter put down the book and talked about his past. "I also adopted some orphans. Many children need help. Some of them just lost themselves a little in the fog, and more of them are in the depths of darkness, talking about his experience of adopting orphans. A hint of tenderness appeared on his face. Some are more serious. Some are children who have been abused by their parents. Some of them are drug abusers, some are obviously bipolar, and some hurt themselves. The whole world, in many ways, has abandoned them to the wolves and lions in the plains and jungles. It sounds like a great cause. Although Peter was not interested in charity, he had to admit that Martian Manhunter's behavior was commendable. If you have financial problems with charity, Mr. Jones, I can donate some. Martian Manhunter shook his head. Thank you, Peter, but I don't think it's needed for the time being. Martian Manhunter politely declined Peter's idea of donating. Peter did not continue to talk about this topic. After a few words with the other party, he moved the suitcase to the car in the yard. Martian Manhunter drove the car towards Metropolis, and it began to drizzle. The rain on the car windshield accumulated slowly, forming stripes mixed with pollen. The wipers were very effective in removing rain, and they wiped these stripes clean. From time to time on the road, you can see townspeople driving to other places to avoid wildfires. Although the Carl wildfire has not yet reached Smallville, most people have already started to move. Dad, isn't Clark coming with us? Azu, who was sitting in the back seat, asked Peter in the co-pilot. Clark will come with his parents later, and we will meet in Metropolis. As Peter spoke, he turned on the radio and searched for radio stations to listen to the news. The players on the Phil's baseball team haven't performed very well this year, but they are actually quietly accumulating strength. The rain will continue to intensify in the next 4 days, and experts say that the Carl wildfire spreading in Kansas will not be affected by the rain, which doesn't seem to be good news. Now a jazz collection from Zechital in Mumbai has become part of our global voice of the cafe column. The three of them listened to the radio, and the car finally arrived in Metropolis at nightfall. Azu looked at the bustling city under the night sky. It was drizzling, and cars whizzed by. Through the misty rain and fog, he saw an electronic city like a mirage not far away. In the distance, the uniform high-rise buildings were like a dim fence, outlining the jagged skyline. How do you feel about coming to Metropolis for the first time, John? Peter asked Azu, who was looking at the scenery outside the window. It's very beautiful, and it's like two different worlds from Smallville. Azu turned around and said to Peter, but there's a sense of depression here. If you live here for a long time, Dad, I guess people will be very depressed. Peter nodded. People here are indeed under a lot of pressure, but many people still flock to it. Why? Dad, because, before Peter finished speaking, the car driven by the Martian hunter suddenly stopped. There was a noise on the dim road that he had just turned. Peter looked over and found that a group of young people were beating up a person near the trash can. The guy being beaten squatted on the road with his head in his arms and didn't say a word, allowing the other party to punch and kick him. The dull sound echoed in the air, and the cars passing by didn't stop to meddle. Peter frowned, and in the dim environment, he could see clearly that the person being beaten was a boy of 14 or 15 years old. The boy with a slicked back hairstyle and a noble temperament all over his body did not say a word even when he was beaten. Martian Hunter saw the scene in front of him, frowned and got out of the car, and shouted at several people, "Hey, what are you doing?" Hearing the voice of Martian Hunter, several young men who were fighting turned around. "It's none of your business. If you don't want to be beaten, get out of here," the thugs threatened him with a bad tone. The boy who was beaten up heard the sound, moved his hands away from his head and looked in the direction of the sound. What he saw was Peter pushing open the car door and getting out of the car. Thanks to OnLife for the reward. Thank you readers for voting. Bow. I wish you gentlemen smile often and good luck will come naturally. Chapter 65. Sir, can you lend me another $100? If I were you, I would leave here immediately for my own safety, Martian Manhunter said to the few people rudely. Damn it, I think you are tired of living. The irritated thugs were about to attack Martian Manhunter and Peter. Facing the thugs rushing up, Peter sighed and suddenly grabbed the hand that the other party stretched out. Although he didn't want to meddle in other people's business, since Martian Manhunter had already made a move, he couldn't just stand by and watch. Grabbing the fingers of the thug who attacked him, Peter twisted it like twisting a sparrow's head. The sturdy fat man screamed loudly and waved his fleshy palm to slap him. Peter slightly turned sideways, and the fat man's hand hit the wall behind him. The other party's index finger and middle finger bent backwards at a scary angle, and after the crisp breaking sound, there was another heart-wrenching cry. Good, 2 fingers on the left hand are also broken, So that it is symmetrical. Peter nodded with satisfaction, then grabbed the butterfly knife that was stabbing at him, and smashed the attacker's face with his other hand like lightning. It was so fast that he couldn't see the trajectory of the punch. The attacker only felt a buzz in his head, and blood spurted out of his nose instantly. The butterfly knife fell from his hand and stabbed into the ground. The Martian hunter's movements were also clean and neat, and he took care of the gangsters in a few moves, making them lie on the ground and groan. The boy lying on the ground, with his mouth slightly open, looked at the two people in front of him who were taking care of the villains in front of him in shock. After the gangsters fled in embarrassment, he staggered to his feet, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and looked at the two people with a heavy breath. "Are you okay, kid?" Martian hunter came over and asked with concern. "I'm fine, thank you," the noble boy bit his lip and covered his injured and bleeding arm, not letting himself look weak and pitiful. "You don't look well, do you need to see a doctor?" Martian Manhunter looked at the boy in front of him and asked, "What's your name?" The boy looked at Peter standing next to him, hesitated for a moment and said, "Thomas, my name is Thomas." "Oh, Thomas, do you need us to take you home?" No, thank you for your help anyway, I think I have to go." When Thomas heard that Martian Manhunter would take him home, his expression was a little flustered. He covered his arm and staggered to leave here. But soon he stopped and looked at his stained clothes hesitantly. Taking a deep breath, he walked in front of Martian Manhunter, trying to suppress the pain from his body, and asked Martian Manhunter, "Sir, can I lend you some money?" When Martian Manhunter heard that the other party was borrowing money from him, he looked at Peter with a surprised expression, and then coughed, "I'm just a butler, maybe you can ask my master." He kicked the ball to Peter who was watching the show next to him. Peter was stunned for a moment, he didn't expect this green-skinned guy to be so black-bellied. Seeing the boy's pleading eyes, Peter was about to refuse, but the other party said to him earnestly, "Sir, I want to borrow $100. I will pay you back $1,000 in a month." Peter, thinking that Peter thought it was too little, Thomas continued, "Then 2,000, or 5,000, 10,000. Hearing the other party shout out $10,000, Peter and Martian Hunter looked at each other. Is this kid kidding him? "Sir, I'm not kidding, I can really pay you back $10,000. Thomas probably felt that his words were not convincing. He took a deep breath and said firmly, "You can give me your address." Peter wanted to refuse at first, but now he was curious about this kid. He was robbed and only had clothes left. He asked for $10,000. So arrogant. He took out his wallet, took out a $100 bill from it and handed it to the other party. "I'll look forward to your promise." "Thank you, I promise, sir." Thomas nodded solemnly and took the bill. After telling the other party where he was staying in the metropolis, Peter and Martian Hunter got in the car and drove to the hotel. "Dad, you've been cheated," Zhu, who was sitting in the back seat and witnessed the whole process, said to Peter with a firm expression. "He just wants to cheat you of your money. I can get off the car and help you get it back." In his opinion, his father's farm is his own farm, and his father's money will be inherited by him in the future. The other party dared to cheat his father's money, which means he cheated his own money. Absolutely unforgivable. Peter did not comment on Zhu's words. He asked the Martian Hunter, "Mr. Jones, what do you think?" "I don't think he is a child who is full of lies," the Martian Hunter said while driving. "Really? If he is not a child who is full of lies, why did you tell us a fake name?" Peter said that the other party's ability to lie could not escape his perception. Maybe he has some concerns. Peter looked at Martian Hunter doubtfully. "Mr. Jones, you can telepathically, you can see his heart, right?" "No, I don't." Martian Hunter shook his head and said, "In fact, it is an offense to peek into other people's hearts. Most of the time, I try not to sense other people's hearts." When Azu next to him heard what he said, he couldn't help but complain in his heart, "You played the guess what you are thinking game when you first saw me and Clark, and no one would believe you." After arriving at the destination hotel, Peter and Martian Hunter took the luggage out of the car and walked into the hotel. The hotel with simple and elegant decoration style is not the most expensive and luxurious one in Metropolis. But there are many famous local restaurants and bars around this hotel that provide guests with food and drinks. It is also one of the more popular hotels in Metropolis. Not long after going upstairs and entering the guest room, the Kent couple arrived with Clark. "Jonathan said that when we have our wedding anniversary, he would take me to Metropolis for a 2-day vacation. I didn't expect it to happen ahead of time." "Thank you so much, Peter." Martha thanked Peter who had booked the hotel for them gratefully. She knew that it was difficult to book a hotel room at this time. "You're welcome, Martha, we are a family," Peter smiled and said. "I have prepaid half a month's room fee for you, just consider it my gift for your wedding anniversary." Jonathan looked at the obviously expensive room in front of him and opened his mouth to say something. But after seeing his wife's happy and excited expression, he swallowed the words in his mouth and thanked Peter. 10 o'clock in the evening. Peter waited until Azu fell asleep, and then prepared to go to a nearby bar for a drink with a Martian hunter. Unexpectedly, just after leaving the hotel, he heard a familiar voice. "Mr. Patrick." Peter looked back and saw Thomas with a bruised face and messy clothes, as if he had been beaten again. "Sir, can you lend me another $100? Chapter 66. If you want to pursue excitement, then follow through. It looks like you're in some trouble, more than just $100. Seeing Thomas's embarrassed expression, Peter shrugged his shoulders. "If you don't mind, you can tell us about your troubles, maybe we can help." "No, sir, I just want to borrow another $100 from you, and I will return you $10,000. Thomas hesitated for a few seconds and finally refused Peter. "You don't seem to know the evil of society, Thomas." Peter walked slowly to the other side. "Look at this street." He pointed at two young men smoking at a corner of the street. "Those two guys are discussing where to rob someone tonight, or where to deal with the ignorant homeless people. This kind of crime is everywhere in this city. They are carnivorous predators, and people like you are harmless herbivores in their eyes. If you have $1 in your hand, they will rob it," Peter said, looking at the bruised eye sockets of the other party. "I guess the $100 I gave you just now was robbed by them, right?" Thomas was stared at by Peter's eyes that seemed to see through his heart, and he rubbed his temples unnaturally. The bruised eyes made him upset, and Peter's eyes made him feel even more restless. Peter took out a Franklin from his wallet and handed it to the other party. "You can take it now, but you can also tell me about the little trouble you encountered, Thomas. What do you choose?" Thomas bit his lip, looked up at Peter's meaningful eyes, and then looked at the two guys on the other side of the street. The two drunken people always cast their eyes in this direction intentionally or unintentionally. "Maybe." Thomas took a deep breath, his eyes suddenly became firm, and said to Peter, "Mr. Patrick, maybe we can make a deal." "Oh? What deal?" Peter became very interested in this young man who was full of adult temperament in his every move. "I can buy this bar and give it to you." He pointed to a bar in front of the few people and said shockingly, "I mean not now, I will buy it later, but Mr. Patrick, you have to do something for me." Peter and Martian Hunter looked at each other. Thomas continued, "A group of robbers stole my watch. If you help me get my watch back, I will give you the bar." "Sir, it sounds like a fair deal, but why would I believe you?" Thomas said confidently. "Because you will believe me, Mr. Patrick. From the moment you lent me the $100, you chose to believe me. Since you made the choice at the beginning, why don't you continue to believe me?" Hearing this, the Martian hunter next to him smiled and said to Peter, "I think what he said makes some sense, sir. You have already invested $200. Giving up now may not be worth a loss." Peter looked at the Martian hunter unexpectedly. "You, a green-skinned Martian, also understand sunk cost?" Peter turned his head, stretched out his hand to the boy, and narrowed his eyes. "Deal." The rain in the city was getting heavier and heavier. The hazy gray light was divided into strands by the rain, shining through the window into the car, dim and wet. Peter drove to the place Thomas said and got his watch back for him. Thomas, sitting in the passenger seat, looked sideways at the water stains dripping on the window. They didn't talk all the way, and soon they came to a street. Several hippies stood on the corner, laughing and talking about something. Peter stopped the car, unbuckled his seat belt, and said to Thomas, "Stay here. Don't get out of the car." Thomas nodded and watched Peter walk into the hippies. The car glass blocked his hearing, and he couldn't hear what Peter said, but the two sides should not have a very pleasant conversation. Peter grabbed a hippie with lightning speed, grabbed the other's throat and slammed him against the wall. A few minutes later, Peter pushed open the car door and came in under Thomas' shocked eyes. "This is your watch, right?" Thomas swallowed his saliva after staring at the watch Peter handed over. "Yes, this is it. It looks like things are going well." Peter started the car with satisfaction. Watching Thomas put the watch on his wrist, he casually asked him, "Is this watch important to you?" "Yes, it's a relic left to me by my father." Thomas stroked the dial with a gloomy expression. Taking a deep breath, he looked up and saw several orphans warming themselves by the fire in the alley. "Mr. Patrick, stop the car," After seeing the orphans warming themselves by the fire, he immediately asked Peter to stop the car. After parking the car, he quickly pushed open the door and walked out, handing one of the girls the $100 Peter had given him before. After a few words, Thomas returned to the car. "So, you borrowed the money just for them?" Peter asked him. "Yes, they helped me a lot. If it weren't for them, I might not have been able to escape." Thomas, realizing that he had let the cat out of the bag, immediately shut his mouth. Peter looked at him unexpectedly, said nothing, and continued to drive forward. It seems that this young man has a lot of secrets. 10 minutes later, Thomas got out of the car and said goodbye to Peter, and walked quickly to the phone booth in the rain. Raindrops fell on the phone booth. Thomas, who was freezing cold, put the phone receiver to his ear. His chin trembled as he waited for the sound to ring. Click. "This is Wayne Manor, I'm Alfred," a familiar voice came from the other end of the receiver. Thomas wanted to say something, but suddenly became timid. He was never timid, but now he couldn't open his mouth. "Sir? Madam? Can you speak?" the man who claimed to be Alfred asked continuously. Thomas' fingers holding the receiver turned wide, and no sound came out of his throat. Other voices came from the receiver. "Alfred, who are you talking to? A call, Master Wayne. Someone may have called the wrong number." Alfred hung up the phone directly. Listening to the busy tone, Thomas hung up the phone weakly, covering his increasingly painful forehead. Alfred must not know that he is in Metropolis now. This can't be blamed on him. The mysterious organization found an identical person to replace himself and live as Bruce Wayne. Alfred certainly couldn't imagine that Bruce, who he gets along with every day, would be a fake. If I tell him the truth, Alfred will definitely be hurt by the mysterious organization. What should I do? Thomas, whose real name is Bruce Wayne, was in a painful dilemma. After a while, Bruce walked out of the phone booth like a zombie. The rain was getting heavier and heavier, and he was shivering with cold because his clothes were wet. The next second, he suddenly felt the rain on his head disappear. Looking up, he found an umbrella over his head. "Thank you for the reward from turkey-flavored guava meat slices, thank you for your voting support, and thank you for your support, readers." Chapter 67. Who is the poor boy? Mr. Patrick, wiping the rain off his face, Bruce looked at Peter, who was holding an umbrella for him, in shock. "You said you were going home, Thomas, but it seems that the way home is blocked." Bruce lowered his head. "I don't know if that place still belongs to me." He didn't know if he could still return to Wayne Manor. "You look like a loser now, not like a real man." Peter patted his shoulder. "Let's go. Follow me back to the hotel first." His super hearing just now had heard the content of Bruce's conversation with Alfred. The combination of Alfred, the butler, calling himself Thomas Wayne, Bruce's father's name, and being rich made it easy for Peter to guess his identity, Bruce Wayne. Looking down at the dazed boy, Peter found it difficult to connect him with the Dark Knight. Hotel. Bruce looked up at Peter and was slightly stunned. After hesitating for a while, he finally followed Peter's footsteps and walked towards the car. "Sir, do you really believe me?" Bruce asked with mixed feelings as he followed Peter. Peter nodded and said, "Of course, I believed you at first, Thomas, but you don't seem to be confident in yourself now," Bruce said with a struggling expression. "Yes, my confidence has been destroyed a little, and sir, I deceived you. My name is not Thomas, my real name is Bruce Wayne." "Well, are there any other deceptions besides this?" No, everything else is true, including the $20,000 and the bar I mentioned. I mean, sir, I just don't want to implicate you, so I used a fake name," Bruce hurried to explain to Peter. Peter nodded. "Now? Why tell me your real name now, Bruce?" Bruce exhaled. "Now, I think. I choose to believe you, sir. I'm honored." Peter continued to walk forward with an umbrella, complaining in his heart, "This kid is not afraid of implicating himself, but he doesn't trust himself." Sitting in the driver's seat, Peter started the car and drove forward in the pouring rain. With one hand on the steering wheel, he casually took out a Franklin and handed it to Bruce. Bruce took the banknote without knowing why. "This is the money you gave to the orphans just now. They can't have this kind of money." Peter said that he took back the whole bill and changed it into change for them. Holding Franklin, Bruce was silent for a moment and thanked Peter. "Thank you, sir." He seemed to be talking to himself or to confide in Peter. "I don't understand why there is sin everywhere in the city, whether it is Gotham or Metropolis." Peter looked at him unexpectedly. This kid now has such a question about sin. Where there is light, there is darkness. This is inevitable, Peter replied casually. Bruce nodded and looked at a church outside the window. The cross above the church stood in the heavy rain, shining brightly after being washed. He murmured, "Why doesn't God save us and dispel the darkness?" Peter followed Bruce's line of sight and found that the other party's eyes were fixed on the cross on the church. He slowed down the car. "God may be a little busy, Bruce. Do you know what some people think the cross represents?" Bruce shook his head. "I don't know. The horizontal line represents humans. It refers to the present world, a world full of material, flesh and dirt, mud, blood, stone, and bones. The vertical line represents the sacred line of God, which is in a dominant position. It is perpendicular to the human world and is the axis of the afterlife and the unknown world." Just then, the car drove to a traffic light intersection, and Peter stepped on the brakes. Jesus stood at the crossroads. He did not choose the horizontal line representing the human world, but the vertical line representing God. He moved his eyebrows and asked Bruce, "If it were you, Bruce, what would you choose? The horizontal line or the vertical line?" He really wanted to know. One is to painfully redeem oneself and others in the human world, and the other is to sacrifice once and for all like Jesus and then be free. Of these two, which heroic way would Batman choose? Me. Hearing Peter let him choose, Bruce was immediately confused. Pinching his fingers, he fell into a dilemma. Although the horizontal and vertical lines sounded simple, he frowned and still didn't know how to choose. Looking at Bruce's slightly tangled expression, Peter's mouth curved slightly. "It's okay, Bruce. This is not a compulsory question. The cross is a crossroads and a symbol of choice. The most difficult thing in life is choice." The green light came on. Peter stepped on the accelerator, and the car drove forward through the intersection. Bruce looked at Peter with doubt and confusion. He always felt that Peter's words seemed to hint at something. The next day, early in the morning, after Peter got up, he saw Bruce, who was dressed neatly, squatting in the corridor and staring at a vase. After hearing the voice, he turned around and saw Peter standing behind him. "Good morning, Mr. Patrick." "Good morning, Bruce. What are you doing?" Bruce pointed at the vase and said, "Nothing, I just think this vase looks familiar. It should be a porcelain from the Celestial Empire, more than 500 years old." Peter glanced at the vase and said, "It's almost the same. A group of robbers robbed them and placed them here in a dignified manner." "Bruce, do you have such porcelain at home?" Bruce said a little unnaturally. "There are similar ones, sir, but they should not be robbed. My ancestors bought them from other people." "I'm glad to hear that your ancestors were businessmen, not robbers, Bruce." Peter was talking to Bruce when Azu heard the voice and walked to the corridor. He was a little surprised to see Bruce appear. "Hello, I'm Bruce Wayne." Bruce took the initiative to extend his hand to show his goodwill to Azu, who was much shorter than him. "Are you the poor boy who borrowed money?" Azu did not shake hands with him, but looked at him. "I will pay it back." "Pay it back? Then pay it back now." Azu looked at him with contempt. "You may not know the concept of money. Let me tell you, I only earn $7 a week from lawn mowing, and you want $100 at every turn. You are more greedy than me. I tell you, you can fool Dad, but you can't fool me." Hearing Azu's threat that didn't sound like a good person, Peter frowned. "John, sorry, Dad." Azu originally used the Great Wilderness Prisoner Skyfinger to attack Bruce, but when he heard Peter's dissatisfied tone, his face changed immediately. Azu, who changed into a harmless expression, said to Peter innocently, "Dad, I'm just afraid that you will be deceived by this poor boy." Looking at Azu, who changed his expression freely and called him poor boy all the time, Bruce turned his head away unhappily. He hated a snotty child. Chapter 68. You don't want your dad to know that you are a liar, right? Hotel restaurant. The news of the wildfire was still being broadcast on TV. As of the evening of the 16th, only 2% of the car wildfire was under control. The Kansas Fire Department said that the hot environment, steep terrain and gusty winds hindered the firefighting work. At present, more than 20,000 people have evacuated their homes. Jonathan looked at the blazing wildfire on the TV screen, sighed and said to his wife, "I hope the fire will not spread to Smallville." He looked up in the direction of Peter and saw that there was suddenly a young man with extraordinary temperament beside him. "Who is that?" Jonathan asked Martha in surprise. "A homeless child that Peter just met." Martha looked at Bruce, who was eating slowly, and said, "Mr. Jones said he is very special, so you don't have to go to school." At the dining table, Azu squinted and asked Bruce, Clark next to him looked at the aristocratic Bruce curiously. He didn't quite understand why a stranger suddenly appeared beside his godfather after one night. "No, I have my own study plan." Bruce put down the toast he was eating and said to Zoo, "I also have a professional teacher. He glanced at Peter. In the past, not now. Have you ever kissed a girl?" "Hey, John." Hearing Zoo's questioning getting more and more excessive, Peter immediately stopped him. "Is this kid itching for trouble?" "Sorry, Dad." Zoo immediately admitted his mistake, but Bruce said he was very rich before. "I think rich people should have done this kind of thing. Something we can't do." Bruce shook his head awkwardly. "No, I didn't." "Then you are the weirdest guy I have ever seen," Zoo commented on Bruce. Bruce touched his nose and thought to himself that I would say the same thing to you. "You are also the weirdest kid I have ever seen." Zoo either called himself a poor boy or said that he would be a weirdo even if he had money. Anyway, in his eyes, whether he had money or not, he could not be a good person. Peter said to Zoo with a serious expression, "Whether you have money or not, John, kissing girls at your age is not allowed." He suspected that Zoo had similar ideas. "I agree, Dad." Zoo looked at Clark and said seriously, "Dad, you should keep an eye on Clark. He likes Lana." Hearing Zoo bringing up the topic, Clark was a little confused. He didn't expect Zoo to tell the godfather about this. "No, I didn't. I never had such an idea." Clark faced Peter's suspicious look and explained with a blushing face, "Lana and I are just friends." Looking at Zoo who betrayed him, Clark couldn't help but secretly criticize Zoo as a snitch. After breakfast, Zoo and Clark stayed in the room, and Peter and Martian Manhunter went out to do business. "Clark, Black, and Vampire Red, choose one." Clark looked at him confusedly. "What to choose? What to choose?" "Choose the president and senior officials on the moon." Clark was even more confused and stared at Zoo blankly. "Sunglasses. Dad bought us 2 small sunglasses." Zoo showed him the 2 children's sunglasses in his hand. "Do you like black lenses or vampire red?" "It doesn't matter. I can actually either one." "Dad said you don't like to make choices." "Clark, this is not a good habit." Zoo put on the vampire red sunglasses and said to him, "How about we analyze it? Vampires are cool, right? At least modern vampires are cool. They dress in black, majestic, and their skin is very pale. My skin is also very pale, and we can all fly. But other than that we don't have much in common." He then changed into another pair of black sunglasses. "As for black, the dark color looks like a blackbird. Blackbirds are a very cool-looking bird. They are used to symbolize death in many myths. People often say that blackbirds are the incarnation of the god of death. Like sparrows, they are responsible for taking the souls of the dead to the underworld." As he spoke, Azu quickly stopped. "Of course, one bad thing is that blackbirds are all black. I often confuse them with rustic crows, so forget it." Clark listened to him and asked in surprise, "Where did you know these things, John?" "Dad told me." Clark nodded as if he had suddenly realized something. Seeing that Clark still couldn't give an opinion, Azu was a little speechless. He coughed and said in a serious tone, "Clark, be serious. You have a chance to change your destiny now. Choose a color of sunglasses for me. You are in power now. Whether you can rewrite destiny and the course of human history depends on you." Here, at this moment, Clark was silenced by Azu's funny speech. "Why does it sound like we are deciding a major event for the life and death of the Earth and mankind?" "Okay," Clark blinked. "Okay, then let's go with Vampire Red." Puff. Azu puffed up his mouth and made a mocking sound. "Vampire Red is absolutely impossible," Azu said in a tone that deserves to be beaten. "I have already thought about it in my mind. It is black." "Stupid, Clark. You can't change your fate. Look, it seems that you always make the wrong choice." Clark was controlled on the spot for 2 seconds. He didn't realize that Azu would be so boring and cunning. Azu wore sunglasses and stood in front of the window looking at the scenery outside. A familiar figure flashed by. Bruce Wayne. Seeing Bruce sneaky leaving the hotel, Azu's brows immediately frowned. He has always been quite wary of this poor boy who cheated his father's money. In addition to the fact that the other party borrowed the money that should have belonged to him, he also had a sense of crisis in his heart. It seemed that his father attached great importance to the other party. Sensing the crisis, he subconsciously guarded against Bruce. "I have to go out for a while." Azu immediately took off his sunglasses and walked outside. "If Dad asks, just say I'll be back soon." Clark looked at Azu's back, sat on the sofa and picked up the vampire red sunglasses. "Well, actually I like red." On the other side, Bruce left the hotel and walked to a remote place in the city. The roads here are crisscrossed, like a web made by a drunk spider, and there are potholes everywhere, vast and desolate. Bruce quickly found the street children he met yesterday. He just said a few words to the street children when he heard a bang sound of air explosion. Several people turned around in surprise and found that it was Azu standing behind them, looking at them with his hands on his shoulders. "Bruce, your lie has been exposed." Azu took a step forward proudly. "You said you are a rich man. Look, these should be your brothers and sisters, right? If Dad knew that you are a liar, what do you think he would think?" Several street children looked at each other and looked at Azu, who showed a villain face. "You don't want your dad to know you're a liar, do you, Bruce? Thank you for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Thank you for your support, Bow." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, First Experience of Azu. "What do you want to say, John?" Bruce frowned and looked at Zu. "You are a liar, a thief, and a liar, Bruce. You deserve to be punished, but I won't do that because Dad needs you." Zu walked slowly towards him. "You promised to pay Dad back $20,000 and a bar. If Dad knew you were a liar, he would be very disappointed, so I won't let it happen." Bruce looked at the self-righteous Zu speechlessly. "You think I'm a liar, John?" "No doubt." Looking at the orphans who were worried about him, Bruce gave them a reassuring look and walked in front of Zu. "Do you know why Mr. Patrick was willing to give me $100 when he first met me, John?" Facing Bruce's imposing question, Zu paused and said, "Because Dad was deceived by you." "No, because Mr. Patrick never judges a person based on his appearance." Bruce stared at him and said word by word, "And you, John, you will never use your senses to experience the deep emotions like your father. This is the difference between you. Just like when Mr. Patrick reads, he will see behind the paper, while you only see the words on the paper." Bruce vented all his dissatisfaction to Zu. He mercilessly ridiculed this prejudiced and self-righteous kid. "Shut up, Zu," whose face was flushed by Bruce, shouted at him. "What you said is completely nonsense." Zu, who was full of anger and anxiety, had a faint red light in his eyes. But soon he controlled his emotions, blinked his eyes, and his red eyes instantly returned to normal. Bang! The next second, a dull sound rang out, and then an orphan standing next to Azu fell to the ground. Hot blood instantly sprayed onto Azu's face. Confused, Azu subconsciously touched the blood on his face with his hand. His laser eyes had been completely controlled and did not shoot outwards, so why did the other party fall to the ground and bleed? Soon he knew what happened. As the street children screamed and fled in all directions, several strong men wearing masks and holding weapons suddenly appeared in the alley and surrounded the few people. "Don't move. Put your hands up, lie on the ground." The fully armed killers who issued threats quickly rushed towards the few people. Bruce, who was startled, knew that these killers were coming for him, and immediately fled the scene as fast as possible. Bang! Bruce jumped to another street, climbed over the railing with a nimble posture, and rushed forward. Buzz! A roaring and violent sound came from behind him. It was the sound of the motor running at full speed. A yellow bulldog jeep rushed towards Bruce. Like a wild horse that had broken free from its reins, it rushed to a place not far behind him in an instant. Although his heart was beating wildly, Bruce still tried his best to suppress his fear and nervousness. The moment the car rushed over, he dodged to the other side of the road. A motorcycle parked next to him with the key still in place came into his sight. Gritting his teeth, Bruce quickly sat on the Yamaha. He had learned motorcycle driving skills from Alfred. Buzz buzz buzz, Bruce's thin body lay on the body of the car, pedaled the motorcycle, pressed the accelerator to the maximum, and rushed out. The high-powered motorcycle was like a wild horse that had broken free from its reins, speeding on the road. The powerful Yamaha motorcycle rushed several meters away in an instant. The yellow Jeep was chasing closely behind. On the other side, Azu looked at the homeless child on the ground who was twitching because of being shot, and then looked at the killers who were rushing towards him with angry shouts. Everything in front of him seemed to have been slowed down, and the air became thick and stagnant. He could even hear his own heavy breathing. The smell of blood, the noise in the air, and the chaotic footsteps of the gunmen were all captured by his senses. Who? The next second, Azu turned around and blinked. Zizzy, red lasers shot out from his eyes and hit the gunman's chest. The gunman, who did not react at all, was pierced directly through the chest, and blood spurted out immediately. The unlucky guy looked down at his wound and fell to the ground with a thump. While splashing dust, the ground shook slightly. Blood flowed out of the opponent's chest and quickly dyed the ground red. After Azu used his laser eyes to kill the gunman, he looked at the other gunmen who were shocked around him. The red light in his eyes became stronger and his little face became a little distorted. Damn it, although he had witnessed the death of many people in the auditorium incident, he still found this way of death a bit unacceptable. Bruce's brother, who was standing in front of him a second ago, fell down the next second. It was so sudden and unexpected. He didn't even understand what happened. And why did he attack the child? Peter once told him that children are gifts from God to parents and should not be harmed. What kind of beast would kill children? The enraged Azu shot lasers from his eyes again and shot at a stunned gunman. With a splatter of blood and the smell of burning flesh, the opponent's heart was pierced by the heat vision, and he fell to the ground with a painful groan. The remaining gunman finally reacted at this time. Damn it! He's a monster. Shoot! Shoot him to death! Bang! 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 The dense barrage of bullets instantly attacked Azu. Azu did not dodge, but let the bullets hit him. With a sound of ding ding dong dong, the bullets hit his body, as if they were shot on a hard steel plate. Feeling the baptism of bullets, Zu took a deep breath and activated his super speed. He flew to gunman with a whoosh, grabbed the other's collar and threw him into the sky. The gunman screamed and experienced an extreme free fall. At the same time, thermal vision came out of Zu's eyes, rushing towards the guy who was about to approach him, and pierced through the other's body with a sizzle. A few minutes later, Peter arrived at the scene. After returning to the hotel and hearing Clark say that Zu had gone out, he and the Martian hunter came out to look for Zu and Bruce. After using super hearing to find this place, he rushed there as quickly as possible. Standing at the entrance of the alley, he gasped after seeing Zu's blood and the bodies lying on the ground. Chapter 70 Bruce Wayne's Collapse. Are you okay, John? Peter walked over quickly and squatted in front of Zu, whose face was covered in blood. Dad, Zu finally came to his senses when he saw Peter appear in front of him. He looked up at Peter's familiar face. He looked at the corpse on the ground blankly, then stretched out his hand to look at the blood on his hand. He was surrounded by a complex emotion of panic, confusion, loss and sadness. Although he had killed zombies before, it was a completely different feeling from that of humans. This feeling made Zu feel short of breath, as if he was trapped in a box sunk into the dark and cold sea water. Dad, I don't want to do that. Zu's anger had long gone. Looking at the corpses on the ground, he looked at Peter helplessly. They killed that street kid. I can't control my emotions. I know, John. Peter took off his suit and wiped the blood off the other's face. Dad believes you. It's okay. Everything is over. But, Dad, Peter interrupted Zu. Look at me, John. Look into my eyes. Do you believe Dad? Yes, I believe Dad. Yeah, then believe Dad. Everything will be fine. Dad promises you. After Peter comforted Zu to calm down, he looked at the body on the ground and called Martian Manhunter's cell phone. Mr. Jones, Martian Manhunter's voice sounded in his mind. Sir, you can actually hang up the phone now. We can communicate with each other mentally. I don't like people in my mind, so we still communicate on the phone. Something happened here. John, can you come over? Not for the time being. I'm also in some trouble here, Martian Manhunter said, looking at Bruce, who was being chased in the distance. Can you solve it? Of course. It will take 2 minutes. After hanging up the phone, he walked towards the jeep chasing Bruce. Bruce was anxiously thinking about how to get away, and he breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Martian Manhunter appear. But seeing that the other party was actually walking straight towards the jeep, he was shocked and quickly shouted to the other party, "Danger, Mr. Jones, get out of the way." But the Martian Manhunter seemed to have not heard his words and did not stop at all. Just when Bruce thought that the other party was going to be hit, the jeep suddenly braked. The jeep made a shrill sound and hit the safety column on the side of the road with a bang and turned over to the side. The Martian Manhunter, who had shown off perfectly, took off his sunglasses and said to Bruce, who stopped his motorcycle and was stunned, "It seems that these guys don't dare to hit me." Bruce looked at the overturned jeep, and then looked at the Martian Manhunter with a charlatan look on his face, and his heart was in turmoil. Who is Mr. Patrick? Why is even a butler so magical? And this butler seems to be more incredible than Alfred. 2 minutes later, the Martian Manhunter, who had dealt with Bruce's affairs, rushed to the scene. After handing over the aftermath of the scene to the other party, Peter took Azu away from the scene. After returning to the hotel, Azu washed his body and was still a little dazed. "Dad, am I evil, John?" Peter shook his head. "No, of course not. Why do you think so? Get rid of your sins, free yourself from your despair, the devil will take you away, without hesitation." This is the lyrics of Evil Polly. I think I am a bit like Polly. After Zu's first rampage, he fell into serious self-doubt. He did not have much disgust for death and killing, but the guilt in his heart could not be eliminated. "No, you are not evil, John. You saved those orphans and stopped those bad guys from hurting others." Peter already knew what happened from Zu's simple narration. "So there is no need to feel guilty, John." He touched Zu's hair. "When facing something we have never experienced, sometimes we have to make a choice. Dad thinks you did the right thing at that time," he added in his heart, "although this choice may lose something." Although Peter did not want Zu to experience killing at such a young age, since it had already happened, he could only enlighten him. Zu's eyelids fluttered and he exhaled. "So, Dad, you don't think I'm the evil John, right?" "Of course not." Peter organized his words. "It's like cancer. Sometimes in order to save lives, you have to remove the lesion, take out an organ, cut off a limb. These gunmen are malignant tumors, and they are all tumors that deserve to be removed by a scalpel, or an axe." Hearing what Zu said, Peter smiled. Being able to say this shows that this kid's mentality has recovered by half. After talking to Zu for a few words and asking him to go to bed early, Peter walked to the other room. In the other room, Bruce was talking to Martian Hunter. After seeing Peter appear, Bruce stood up a little awkwardly. He knew that he had made trouble today. If Peter's housekeeper hadn't arrived at the scene in time, he would probably fall into the hands of the mysterious organization. And he also killed a street kid, causing Zu to be almost caught. At this time, he didn't know that Zu had killed all the killers, and thought that Peter had arrived at the scene in time to rescue Zu. "I'm very sorry, sir." Bruce bowed his head and apologized to Peter. "Today, Mr. Jones and I went to Gotham. Guess who we met there?" Peter sat down and said to him calmly, "It's you. There is a young Master Wayne in Wayne Manor, and you said you are Bruce Wayne, so can you tell me which one is real?" Peter looked at him and said, "Remember what we said before? No more lies." Startled by Peter's oppressive eyes, Bruce bit his lip. "Sorry, Mr. Padrick, I haven't told you because I don't want to." Before the other party finished speaking, Peter interrupted him, "Because you want to solve it yourself, right?" He roughly guessed that it was a mysterious organization in Gotham that implemented a substitution plan to replace the fake Bruce with a real one. Then when the other party was about to imprison the real Bruce, something happened in the middle, causing the real Bruce to escape to Metropolis and finally meet him. You used that group of homeless children to provide you with information, and then wanted to investigate the fake Bruce, or some organization behind him. You thought you could solve everything, but you forgot that you were just a child. An innocent orphan died because of this, Peter said bluntly to Bruce, who looked polite but was rebellious at heart. "He died because of you, because of your immaturity and arrogance, Bruce." "No." Bruce's face turned red, and he said to Peter in pain, "No. It's not like that. I have the ability to solve it. I don't want those to happen." Martian Hunter saw Bruce's pain and shook his head at him with some reluctance. Peter pretended not to see it. "No, you can't, Bruce. You think you hide it well, but in fact, you are always upset about your incompetence in your heart. You are not as strong as you think." Thanks to Jaya Ozi Meekson and Thickingle for the rewards, and thank you readers for voting. Bow. In addition, recommend a very good wish-making article to friends. Interested readers can click on the link. Chapter 71. Can you teach me to become strong? You shouldn't say that about Bruce. After Bruce left the room, Martian Manhunter said to Peter, "This kid is not as bad as you say." "I know." Peter stared at the flames in the fireplace. "Rebellious, self-righteous, lonely, suspicious, stubborn and paranoid in his bones. If he was in school, he would definitely be the kind of student called a freak. Even if he was rich, if he was a rich second generation, he might be a playboy that people loved and hated. If he was a hero, he might be a knight who protected the city." Peter picked up the coffee with a unique taste that Martian Manhunter brewed. "But now, he can't save anyone. He's just a brat who'll mess everything up." Martian Manhunter moved his eyebrows and said, "Maybe you can add a billionaire brat, Bruce Wayne." Peter looked at him in surprise. Martians have a sense of dry humor? Is John okay? Without noticing Peter's expression, Martian Manhunter picked up an Oreo cookie and asked Peter. He's still emotionally stable. You can give him some psychological counseling tomorrow. Peter always thought that Martian Manhunter was suitable for a career as a psychologist. Using the ability of reading minds to solve other people's psychological problems, it's a professional match. I never easily peek into other people's hearts. Martian Manhunter seemed to see what Peter was thinking and said seriously. It's like a cat saying that it has never stolen anything in its life. Okay, Jones, do you know which organization replaced Bruce? Peter turned the topic back to the right track. Martian Manhunter's hand holding the Oreo paused in the air, and did not answer directly, but asked Peter, how much do you know about Gotham? Peter, not much, he said to Martian Manhunter, all I know about Gotham is through Art Bell. Art Bell, a nightly program on Gotham Radio, mainly involving supernatural phenomena and various strange news. The commentators in it will talk about conspiracies, UFOs and all the strange things in the United States. The reason why Peter paid attention to this radio program was completely out of bad taste. Gotham City is a city with simple folk customs, but there are many super criminals. Some of them are crazy, some are mentally ill or some are perverted. He listened to the radio station just to have some fun, to see if he could hear the news about those bizarre super criminals he heard in his previous life. Your taste is a little different, Peter. After complaining, Martian Manhunter said to him, have you heard of a mysterious organization in Gotham? This organization hidden in the dark, completely unpunished, unknown, and controlling the power of Gotham. Peter shook his head. No, you sound like Jones, the host of Art Bell Radio. He put down his coffee and asked, do you suspect that this mysterious organization has replaced Bruce? Martian Manhunter said with a serious expression, yes, and I got a message that this mysterious organization seems to be plotting something big in Gotham. Hearing this, Peter stared at the dark night outside the window. The skyline of Gotham City, separated by a river, appeared faintly in the night. This kind of thing happens every day in that city. It's too far away from us, huh? Bruce suddenly woke up from his trembling. Wiping the sweat off his face, he let out a dejected breath. He had the nightmare about that alley again. The scene of his parents' death in the nightmare was played out again. He turned his head and looked at the window. The glass in the night seemed to be stained with blood, black blood, thick and sticky. The blood in the alley that turned into nightmare seemed to flow slowly on the glass. Shaking his head, Bruce looked at the glass again and found that there was nothing on it. He was in a very bad mood. After being dazed for a while, he got up from the bed, put on his clothes, left the room, and walked upstairs. After arriving at the rooftop alone, Bruce wrapped his clothes tightly to resist the cold wind. Taking a deep breath, he walked to the edge of the rooftop. Looking down at the matchbox-sized car below, he felt a little dizzy because he was afraid of heights. Standing on the edge, looking at the rooftop on the other side, he mustered up the courage to try to jump over. But when he was about to jump over, he suddenly became cowardly. After hesitating for a long time, he still didn't jump over. What are you doing, Bruce? The sudden voice behind him startled him, and he staggered and almost fell. He steadied himself and looked back, and found that it was Peter standing there. I'm trying to overcome my fear, Mr. Patrick. Bruce turned around and said with an unnatural expression, what you said tonight is very right. I have always been cowardly and fearful in my heart. Maybe only by overcoming fear can I become strong. Only if I become strong, something like this will not happen today. Bruce's face was full of regret and self-blame. I won't kill innocent people. Fear is not something you avoid like the plague, Bruce. Peter didn't expect that this kid would try to overcome fear in this way. He organized his words and said, it can also be a tool, a spur. Without fear, life is meaningless. He stretched out his hand to the other party. Come down, you shouldn't stand so high. Bruce looked at Peter's hand and hesitated for a moment, but finally grabbed it and jumped down. You are disappointed in me, aren't you, Mr. Patrick? Bruce asked Peter after jumping down. Peter shook his head. No, we all grew up from immaturity. Bruce was silent for a long time. After a struggle in his heart, he bit his lip and said to Peter, Sir, I actually know who is hunting me. Peter looked at him in surprise. Who? Bruce said with a complicated expression. That mysterious organization, it's called the Court of Owls. It is said to be composed of Gotham's famous families. It controls Gotham, secretly observes everything in Gotham, and infiltrates Wayne Enterprises. My parents' death may even be related to it. It was also the people of the Court of Owls who knocked me out and let the fake Bruce replace me." Bruce felt a cold wind, wrapped his clothes tightly, and whispered the ballad he heard, "Be careful of the Court of Owls. They are always monitoring your travel. I have been investigating this mysterious organization. I don't know why they want to replace me with a fake Bruce, but I know, they must be planning something. Alfred, my friends, they may all be in danger." Bruce's tone was full of worry. "Not only Gotham, the wildfires spreading in Kansas this time may be related to the Court of Owls. Sir, I want to stop them. I know I'm not strong enough. Can you teach me to be strong?" Chapter 72 God, I will make him bleed too. "I want to be as strong as you, sir," Bruce said sincerely. "I want to save Gotham, save Alfred and my friends." Peter looked at the boy in front of him as if he was getting to know Bruce all over again. Batman wants to learn from him? Suppressing the weird feeling, Peter shook his head. "There's not much I can teach you, Bruce," Bruce asked puzzledly. "Why, sir?" "Because," Peter looked into the other's puzzled eyes and said slowly, "I have never been a normal human being. Because I am not a normal human being, so I cannot have an invincible and unyielding will in the day-to-day physical training, and I cannot use this will to overcome the physiological pain limit." Peter knows himself well. He's given superpowers by the Watch, so he can't teach Batman too much? "Because I am not an ordinary person with a mortal body, it is impossible for me to do everything possible to maximize the wisdom and courage of human beings." He paused and continued to the stunned Bruce, "But what I said above is what you, as an ordinary human being, need most, sir." Bruce looked at Peter blankly. "Who are you?" He became more and more curious about Peter's identity. "You will know later." Peter changed the subject. "But, Bruce, I can teach you something about how to face fear." The next day, early in the morning, in the hotel gym, as soon as Peter entered, he saw Bruce practicing boxing. Bruce, with sweat all over his face, seemed to have been practicing in the gym for a long time. "Bruce, let's practice boxing." He picked up the boxing gloves and asked Bruce to practice with him. "Sir, do you know boxing?" "A little bit, at least I'm not a layman." Peter asked Bruce to attack him first. Bruce took a deep breath and began to sway left and right, facing Peter like a cobra ready to attack at any time. Bang! Bruce took a step forward and threw a straight punch. Peter dodged it easily and grabbed his wrist. "You seem to have replaced guilt with anger and used it to drive yourself, Bruce, but this is not enough." Facing Bruce's very powerful attack, Peter easily resolved it and pushed the opponent back. He could feel that Bruce was holding back a lot of energy when he swung his fist, as if he wanted to use this fierce energy to inject strength into himself. Unwilling to admit defeat, Bruce took a few deep breaths and continued to attack forward. While stepping forward, he punched out with his left fist. After being blocked by Peter, he immediately retracted his left fist that was pretending to attack, and threw out his right fist to hit Peter. In the end, Peter still held his fist. "Somewhat smart, Bruce, but not enough. Don't show your thoughts too directly, and learn to hide your intentions." Peter let go of Bruce and signaled him to continue attacking him. Bruce became more courageous when he encountered setbacks and continued to attack Peter. After training with Bruce for a while, Peter received a call from Martian Manhunter and ended the sparring and left the gym. "Are you okay, Zoo?" Clark asked Zoo, who was a little absent-minded, worriedly. "I'm fine, just." Zoo followed Clark to the swimming pool in the gym. He didn't know how to describe his feelings. "I don't know how to describe that feeling. I killed someone yesterday." "Clark, what?" Clark stopped and looked at him in shock. "What happened?" "I don't know. I was following Bruce and was surrounded by a group of gunmen. I don't know why they attacked us. A homeless child died and I was very angry." Clark listened to Zoo's story, frowned and asked him, "Are you not hurt, John?" "No, I'm not. To be honest, I'm not too scared. I'm just worried that my father will be angry." Zoo confided his thoughts to Clark. "I'm worried that my father will think I'm a bad boy. I killed someone and messed up. I don't want my father to think I'm a killer." Clark came back to his senses from the shock and didn't know what to say. Seeing Azu's worry, he comforted him. "Don't worry, John, you are not a killer. Just like Popeye said, you are you and it won't change." Azu exhaled and thanked Clark. "Thank you, Clark, and thank Popeye for me." As the two of them walked towards the swimming pool, they happened to see Bruce practicing boxing. Azu, who was angry, immediately walked towards him quickly. "Hey, Bruce, maybe you can explain to me what happened yesterday," Azu said unceremoniously. Bruce looked up at Azu and continued to beat the sandbag. I have nothing to explain. Well, you don't even plan to explain your embarrassing escape at that time. Azu put his arms in front of his chest, looked at Bruce who was extremely upset and said, you abandoned your poor brothers and sisters at that time. I didn't abandon them. Hearing Azu's words, Bruce stopped what he was doing and stared at him angrily. Those guys are targeting me. Only if I leave there can I provide the best protection for them. Azu shook his head. But why did someone die? Admit it, Bruce. You are not only a poor boy, but also a coward. Shut up. I'm not a coward. Bruce took off his boxing gloves, his tone becoming more and more anxious. Although he is 8 or 9 years older than Azu, he was still irritated by this brat. Seeing Bruce's broken defense, the petty Azu finally felt relieved from the ridicule he received from the other party yesterday. You are a coward, and a poor boy, a liar. Shut up. Bruce couldn't help but throw his boxing gloves at the other party. With a bang, the boxing gloves were easily caught by Azu. After looking at the boxing gloves, Azu's original anger suddenly dissipated, and an idea came to his mind. It seems that you like boxing very much? Dad has also taught me boxing. Bruce, let's have a boxing match to decide whether you are a coward or not. Do you dare to accept the challenge? Bruce didn't know that Zu was a Superman. Looking at Zu, who was much shorter than him, he walked up to him and looked down at him. I will teach you a lesson from Mr. Patrick. Kid, you can't replace Dad. When Clark walked in front of the two, he saw the two people preparing to box. He looked at Bruce worriedly and advised him, Bruce, forget it, you can't beat Zu. Bruce looked at the confident Zu and refused. It doesn't matter, Clark, he is not a god. Even if he is a god, it doesn't matter. I will make him bleed as a god. Thank you readers for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Thank you so much. I hope readers have a perfect weekend. Chapter 73. Tell me, who is God? Bruce threw a straight punch at Zu. Looking at the attack that was slower than a turtle, Zu easily caught Bruce's fist. Before Bruce could figure out what was going on, with a bang, he felt that his whole body was pushed out by a huge force. Bruce, who fell to the ground, felt dizzy instantly, and there seemed to be countless black spots moving in front of his eyes. Covering his forehead, he stood up with all his strength after a while, looking at Zu with an indifferent expression. What happened just now? He was a little confused about the situation, and looked at Clark, and found that the other party had an expression of a spectator, and did not notice Zu's abnormal speed just now. Well, maybe I saw it wrong. Keep a calm mind, and keep a steady breathing rhythm. Bruce, who adjusted his mentality, continued to attack Zu. This time, Zu still easily dodged the fist he swung. While dodging, Zu punched his collarbone. Bruce felt that his collarbone was as painful as if it was hit by a hammer, and the explosive pain instantly swept through his body. Before he could step back, Zu's fist hit him in the chest again. With a bang, Bruce, who was unable to fight back in time, fell heavily to the ground again. Ugh, he groaned, and felt that his back was hit, like an apple split in half by an axe. He didn't expect Zu's strength and reaction speed to be so inhuman. He didn't even see clearly how the other party attacked him. Bruce opened his mouth and lay on the floor, wanting to say something, but found that he could only spit out red blood bubbles from the corners of his mouth. His lips were wet, as if they were stuck together. Reaching out to touch his lips, Bruce found that the corners of his mouth were broken. You're right, Bruce, I'm God. God never bleeds. Azu looked at Bruce, who was lying on the ground, and walked to him proudly. You lost, Bruce, admit it, you are just an incompetent, ordinary poor boy. He pointed to his eyes. Don't get close to Dad in the future, and don't think about cheating money. I will always keep an eye on you. After looking at Bruce, who was lying on the ground gasping for breath, he said to Clark, let's go, Clark, let's go swimming. Bruce clenched his fists, stared at Azu's back as he left, and said unwillingly, you will bleed. Who is God? In the room, Peter asked Azu in a bad tone. Azu, who was standing in the corner with his head down, secretly glanced at Peter with a bad expression, and then quickly lowered his head. Taking a deep breath, Azu, with his mouth puffed up like a big mushroom to exhale gas, replied to Peter nervously, you, my father, you are the real God. Peter, he was full of black lines, not knowing where this kid learned such dirty words from. After learning from Clark that Zu had beaten Bruce up, he immediately called him over. I'm not a god, and you'll never be a god, John. I know, Dad. Zu nodded, then muttered, I don't want to be a god, it's just that Bruce said he would make me bleed, and I was guided by his words. Peter raised his voice and stared at him. Do you think it's Bruce's fault? No, Dad, I just don't like him. Zhu raised his head and told Peter what he was thinking. There's something I don't like about Bruce. What? I don't know how to describe it, Dad. It's like the black on a crow, ominous or troublesome. Anyway, I don't like this feeling. So you beat him? Use your superpowers to bully an ordinary person. I was wrong, Dad. Zhu immediately admitted his mistake. I won't do it next time. I can admit my mistake to Bruce. In order not to reduce the impression points in his father's heart, Zhu made a very sincere suggestion, or he can fight back against me. Peter looked at Zhu's sincere expression and fell silent. Let Bruce fight back. Are you going to tire him to death? Peter was so angry about what Zhu said that he had to give up scolding him temporarily. Go apologize to Bruce, and don't go out for a day and reflect on yourself at home. Before leaving the room, he suddenly remembered something and said to Zhu, don't have conflicts with Bruce in the future. And, most importantly, if he wants to fight you, refuse him. Zhu scratched his head and watched his father's back as he left. While feeling lucky to have escaped a disaster, he was a little confused in his heart. Why didn't his father let him fight Bruce? Just when Peter finished scolding Zhu and was about to talk to Bruce, he met a Martian manhunter who was walking towards him. Peter, something is not right. Looking at the serious Martian manhunter, Peter stopped and said, what happened? The wildfire's about to reach Smallville, so soon? Peter frowned immediately. It's impossible. The fire can't spread to the town so quickly. Martian hunter took the initiative to explain to Peter, the spread direction of the car wildfire this time is mainly affected by cold air currents. The air currents in Kansas will try to enter the high temperature and low pressure area on the Atlantic Ocean because the land is relatively cold, but there is a towering mountain range between Kansas and Nebraska that blocks the air currents, so the wind will be blocked. Smallville should not be affected so quickly. You mean? Peter's expression was solemn. The fire was caused by human factors. I don't know, but there must be some problems in the middle, and the government has also discovered this problem. Martian hunter looked at the city skyline outside the window. They have already taken action. Action. Quick, go. Go. Get in the fire truck. Outside the town of Smallville, firefighters endured the scorching flames around them, grabbed a man's arm and pulled him to the fire truck. The man was accompanied by his wife and 2 children, and the family ran to the fire truck as fast as possible following the firefighters. After the family got in the car, the flames spread rapidly. Quick. Drive. The driver immediately started the fire truck, but after starting, the car rushed forward for a distance and then broke down. Damn. What happened? The driver didn't care about the burning fire, and stuck his head out of the window to look at the tires of the car. Fuck. The tires melted. The man holding the child covered his son's nose to prevent him from inhaling the smoke. What should we do? He asked the firefighter loudly while comforting the child. No way, it's too late. There's nothing we can do. The firefighter looked at the blazing flames outside the window and said desperately. Chapter 74. Fear can also breed strength. Just when everyone in the fire truck thought that the fire truck was about to be engulfed by the fire, the driver suddenly saw a figure hanging in the sky outside the car window. It was like a god appearing in the sky, blocking everyone's sight. The Martian hunter, wearing a cloak, slowly landed on the ground and said to everyone in the fire truck, "Don't worry, you will be fine." The shocked people looked at each other. They had never seen the Martian hunter before, and they held their breath nervously. "I'm not a bad person, so don't be afraid. Next, sit tight and I will take you away from here." As if seeing everyone's fear of him, the Martian hunter signaled everyone to sit tight, leaned down and grabbed the front of the fire truck with both hands and lifted it up. Soon the Martian hunter held the fire truck and rushed out of the flames. Bang! The fire truck was placed in a safe area by him. Without bothering to greet the frightened passengers, he quickly flew into the sky and continued to search for other people trapped in the wildfire. A few minutes later, the Martian hunter saw several firefighters leaning against a fire truck, struggling to spray water at the flames coming from all around. But the fire didn't decrease, and it approached the firefighters with a more rapid momentum. Martian hunter quickly landed. "Hey, guys, you have to go." The firefighters were all surprised to see Martian hunter falling from the sky. "No. We can't leave. We are Smallville's firefighters, and our home is behind us." The sturdy firefighter's face was covered with ash, and he shouted at him hoarsely, "We must control the fire here." Looking at the firefighter holding a fire hose to spray out the flames, Martian hunter covered the sparks with his hands. Just as he was about to say something, A fire suddenly came with a strong wind. Martian Hunter, who was standing in the leeward position, was quickly swept by the flames. No, the moment he was swept by the fire, Martian Hunter immediately let out a painful scream and fell to his knees with a thump. The bone-eroding pain and mental collapse came in an instant, and the screams from the other party scared the surrounding firefighters. The firefighters wanted to save people at the first time, but the fierce fire separated several people, and they could only watch each other wailing. Just as the screams of Martian Hunter became weaker and weaker. Whoosh, a sound of breaking through the air came swiftly. Peter was like lightning, breaking through the fire and standing beside Martian Hunter in an instant. Wearing black framed glasses, Peter, who had disguised his breath and appearance, looked down at the screaming Martian Hunter, took a deep breath and exhaled violently. Although his superhuman physical fitness prevented him from breathing out frost like Clark, his strong and powerful breath was like a gust of wind, blowing out the flames on Martian Hunter. Looking at the dying Martian Hunter with smoke all over his body, Peter shook his head and complained, Martian Hunter was burned to death by fire, and you almost went down in history. He knew that Martian Hunter's weakness was fire. Because his people died in the fire, Martian Hunter had a strong fear of fire. He had advised Martian Hunter not to come before. As a result, the stubborn green man who came to rescue people was almost burned to death. Crouching down, Peter picked up the unconscious Martian manhunter and blew out the flames that were approaching this side. After clearing a safe area, Peter signaled the stunned firefighters to leave here quickly. He had no intention of putting out the fire now. Although he could use his breath to extinguish small-scale flames, facing the overwhelming wildfire, even if he blew his lungs, he could not extinguish this degree of disaster. Metropolitan Hotel. Peter has returned with the Martian Manhunter. The Martian Manhunter, who has returned to his black image, lies on the bed in a coma. Zoo, Clark and Bruce stand by, looking at the Martian Manhunter worriedly. At present, Zoo and Bruce are in a truce. Zoo asked Peter, Dad, what happened to Mr. Jones? He's injured. Peter glanced at the unconscious Martian Hunter and said, a kind of mental trauma. Clark frowned and asked, don't we need to send him to the hospital? No, this kind of mental trauma can't be treated by doctors. He needs to heal himself. Maybe he is fighting his fear in his dream now. Bruce, who was next to him, was stunned when he heard Peter say that Martian Hunter was fighting his fear. Azu asked Peter puzzledly, Dad, does a man like Mr. Jones also have fear? Mr. Jones is not a god, of course he will have fear. Don't forget, even a handful of dust contains fear, Peter said to Azu and the others. A person can destroy everything in his heart, love, hate, faith, and even doubt, but as long as he is still alive, he cannot destroy fear. As he said that, Peter looked at the stunned Bruce. Bruce, are you right? Bruce heard Peter asking him questions and recovered from his daze. Yes, sir, he asked Peter with mixed feelings. Sir, does Mr. Jones also have incurable trauma and fear? Yes, he witnessed terrible things with his own eyes. Peter stepped forward and touched Bruce's hair. But don't forget, Bruce, fear is not all bad memories, it can also breed power, okay? Peter took his hand away from Bruce's head, clapped his hands and said to the others, I'm going out for a while, you guys take care of Mr. Jones here, and call me immediately if there is any situation. Can you do it? Azu and Clark nodded repeatedly. I can do it, Dad. Bruce next to him didn't say anything, he kept looking at the unconscious Martian Manhunter, and kept thinking about what Peter said in his mind. Can fear also breed power? He suddenly thought of the bats that frightened him. Bats frightened him, so can they also breed the power of fear? At the same time, outside the town of Smallville, fully armed soldiers have surrounded a burning forest. General Sam Lane, the commander, ignored the scorching flames and walked to the front to look at the soldiers who were besieging the fireman. He was originally on vacation with his daughter. After receiving the task assigned by the Ministry of Defense, he gathered soldiers and rushed here as quickly as possible. Is that guy invulnerable? Looking at the fireman in the distance with flames all over his body and being attacked by soldiers, his face was full of shock. Keep shooting. The lieutenant who was in charge of the on-site command ordered the soldiers to shoot at the fireman. Bang! 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 The steel barrage composed of bullets swept towards the fireman, but it was completely ineffective. We can't hit him, Captain. Our bullets melted before they even touched him, the soldiers shouted to the lieutenant in a panic, shielding their faces from the rolling heat waves. Seeing this, the lieutenant had no choice but to ask the soldiers to withdraw quickly. Seeing that the attack was frustrated, Sam Ryan immediately called for air support through the military intercom. He would not let go of this culprit, who might cause half of Kansas to be on fire. With the superpowers this guy possesses, if he escapes, I don't know how much chaos it will cause. Buzz, there was a roar of air being torn apart from the northwest, and a fighter plane was speeding towards this side. Thank you book friend tale number 5653 for the reward, and thank you readers for your voting support. Bow to thank you. Chapter 75, Azu rejected by friends. Lock on. Successfully locked the target, the fighter pilot reported to his superiors via the radio. Confirmed, launch. General Ryan gave the launch order with a solemn expression. Swoosh, a missile slid out of the fighter's belly, and shot towards the fireman with a long tail flame. With a boom sound, the mountain forest was quickly surrounded by thick smoke and hot explosion flames. The ground was slightly vibrated by the bombardment, and the pungent burning smell entered everyone's nose. General Ryan immediately picked up the telescope to observe the situation in the bombardment area. What surprised him was that the fireman was not only not destroyed, but there was an inexplicable figure. Cough cough cough, the fireman, who was coughing and covering his chest, knelt on the ground and trembled violently. Although the bombing just now did not directly kill him, it caused serious damage to his body. He was in great pain all over, his heart was beating wildly, and the flames burning on his body quickly dimmed. The fireman took a break for a while, and looked at the fighter plane whizzing through the sky with fear. Just as he was about to run away, he suddenly caught a glimpse of Peter walking towards him step by step from the sea of fire. The fireman looked up in shock, his eyes full of disbelief. He couldn't imagine that there were humans who could walk out of the explosion and flames unscathed. Stop. Don't come over. Filled with fear, he shouted to Peter, please. Don't come any closer. I don't want to hurt you. Peter stopped as he looked at the terrified and painful fireman in front of him. You seem a little scared? Don't worry, I won't hurt you, and you can't hurt me either. Peter walked up to the burning fireman, ignoring the blazing flames on his body, and stretched out his hand to him. Do you mind if we get to know each other? The fireman looked at Peter's outstretched hand in astonishment. Why are you able to? Maybe I have some talent, Peter asked him calmly. Who are you? Why are you here? The fireman hugged his head and said painfully, I don't know who I am. I don't know why I am here. I don't even know what happened to me. Peter listened to the other person's words and noticed that the other person's pulse accelerated, and the temperature around him also rose rapidly with his heart rate. He continued to maintain the handshake gesture. I guess your temperature may be related to your psychological stress level, and the fire on your body may come from the pressure of the military attacking you. He now suspected that the wildfire was caused entirely by the fireman in front of him. In order to find out what happened, he tried his best to calm the other person's emotions. The fireman looked up helplessly. I'm scared, I know. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. Facing the seemingly young fireman, Peter reached out and patted the other's shoulders covered with flames. Just breathe. After being touched by Peter, the fireman's emotion seemed to stabilize, and the flames on his body gradually calmed down. After a while, the flames on the other's body were completely extinguished, and he turned into a naked bald boy. Peter took off his coat and covered the other's body. The calmed bald boy looked at Peter gratefully. Thank you, sir. He looked at the surrounding burned woods and apologized to Peter with guilt and self-blame. I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to cause all this to happen. Peter glanced at the soldiers not far away and said to the bald boy, let's leave here first. General Ryan on the other side was using a telescope to observe the two people, but he didn't expect that the two people suddenly disappeared in the next second. Stunned, he put down the telescope, rubbed his eyes and picked up the telescope again. There was still no trace of the two people at the scene. Damn. What happened? General Ryan looked like he had seen a ghost. After returning to Metropolis, Peter handed the bald boy to the awakened Martian Manhunter. After a conversation between the two, Martian Manhunter roughly knew the other party's identity. He doesn't know his own name. He only remembers that he escaped from the laboratory. Martian Manhunter said to Peter, I traced back his confused memories and saw that the laboratory in his memory is located in Indian Hills in Gotham. This laboratory has been conducting illegal experiments and is controlled by a mysterious organization behind the scenes. I guess that organization is the Court of Owls, right? Peter looked at the Martian Manhunter, who was in a bad mental state, and asked, Are you okay, Jones? I'm fine, but I'm a little depressed by the fire. Maybe eating some cookies will be fine. Martian Manhunter picked up a cookie and continued, You guessed right. It is the Court of Owls that controls this laboratory. They use the boy's blood to try to develop some kind of serum virus and then release it. They want to destroy Gotham. Martian Manhunter shrugged his shoulders. There is a great possibility that this boy is their weapon. He escaped from the laboratory and fled to a deserted forest in panic, which resulted in a forest fire. Then the government discovered his existence and sent troops to capture him. Peter nodded. It sounds logical, but why did they replace Bruce? Martian Manhunter said. Maybe Bruce is very important to them. Peter pondered for a moment, and did not continue to talk about Bruce, but continued to talk about the bald boy. Maybe, that boy is also very important to us, and his emotions are very unstable. Your psychic ability can calm him, right? The bald boy is not only a weapon of the Court of Owls, but also has the ability to control fire. He can be used to check and balance a Martian Manhunter in the future. Although he trusts the Martian Manhunter now, he never thinks that this trust will last forever. It is always his code of conduct to be prepared. No problem, he is very stable now, Martian Manhunter said while tasting Oreos. Hey, Bruce, Zoo called Bruce in the corridor. What's wrong? Bruce looked at the naughty kid who had just beaten him up unhappily. I'm sorry for beating you up before. Zoo looked very sincere. Dad scolded me, and I know I was wrong. Ahem. Dad said that you used to be very rich in Gotham. Is this true? Yes. Bruce looked at him suspiciously, not knowing what this kid was up to. That means you are not a poor boy, but a down-and-out young master. I am not a down-and-out young master. Bruce was a little unhappy. In his eyes, the labels of him were either poor boy or down and out. Wasn't there any positive one? Anyway, you were very rich before, right? Azu showed a fake smile that Peter was familiar with in his previous life, and said to Bruce, I think maybe we can turn enemies into friends. I mean, you, Bruce, we can be real friends, not interested. Bruce shook his head with a stern face and turned to leave. Azu stared at Bruce's back as he left. The fake smile on his face quickly disappeared, and was replaced by a gnashing expression. John, after hearing Peter's voice calling him in the distance, the negative energy expression on Azu's face quickly disappeared. Dad, I'm here. Bruce walked forward along the corridor and soon walked to the public area. The breaking news about Gotham on the TV in the public area immediately attracted his attention. Thank you readers for your support and votes. You are the real heroes. I would like to recommend a Friends Entertainment novel Village Chief, I Want to Be Famous. Readers who are interested in it can read it. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.